Hey guys, ever wondered what it feels like to wake up every morning knowing that by dusk you might be strangled by a wildebeest or impaled by a disgruntled senator's pet tiger? No. Well, stick around because in the next 10 to 15 seconds, I'll paint you the glorious picture of stepping into the arena, where applause is optional and surviving is merely a bonus. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. So, you've decided to become a gladiator. Congratulations. You've signed up for a life of fame, adoration, and a guaranteed early death. You'll live fast, die young, and leave behind a legacy of blood-soaked sand and shredded tunics. But let's rewind today one of your new, glamorous career in an ancient Roman ludus, and uncover why it truly sucked. Your induction begins at dawn with a cheerful kick to the ribs from a burly lanista who smells like fermented wine and broken dreams. There's no welcome breakfast, just a slice of stale barley bread and a cup of water, the shade of muddy bathwater. You're handed a wooden sword, because obviously they wouldn't waste good metal on a rookie destined to become lion chow. They demonstrate 3 mandatory moves, the thrust, the parry, and the faceplant, when you inevitably trip over your own sandals. Training is brutal. You'll spend hours learning how to dodge, strike, and bleed artistically. Your coach, a retired gladiator turned drill sergeant, will shout things like, "Show me your rage," while swinging a whip that seems to have been fashioned from the very tendons of your ancestors. Every mistake, like forgetting to duck or accidentally smacking your training partner in the shin, is met with a swift reminder that Rome doesn't pay for broken limbs. The morale-building pep talks sound something like, "Smile or I'll gut you myself, you donkey-brained weakling." And dietary bliss? Think boiled lentils, watered-down goat milk, and the occasional hunk of salted pork so tough you'll swear you're chewing on a wagon wheel. Protein shakes? Not in the 1st century BC. Your nutritionist is a half-drunk cook who assumes more salt equals more flavor, and also makes your throat feel like it's hosting a bonfire. You learn quickly. Mastication is overrated. Just swallow, pray, and focus on not puking. Between training sessions, you live in barracks that would make a pigeon think twice about roosting there. Bunks are communal. Imagine 6 sweaty dudes piled like human cordwood. Privacy is a myth. Personal space is a fantasy. Your one concession to comfort is a straw mat that offers about as much padding as a slab of cold marble. Nightly lullabies include the snores of your bunkmate, the scuffling of rats looking for breakfast scraps, and the occasional roar from the next cell for those less fortunate who've already been declared unfit for service. You also get the undying affection of fellow rookies who will patrol your bunk at night asking, "Hey, you still breathing?" As if that's a helpful morale check. A single cough anywhere in the barracks triggers a full-blown panic. Plague! We're all dying. Only to discover it was just someone snoring through their nose. Spoiler alert, none of you survive long enough to develop immunity. Your social life outside the barracks consists of 2 options: beggars wanting to rub your shoulders for good luck, or leering matrons convinced you'll scoop them up into your curly helmeted arms. Both scenarios are equally fun when you're sporting fresh bruises, a missing earlobe, and a permanent twitch courtesy of that one gladiator who practiced his overhead swing a bit too enthusiastically on you. Contracts with the ludus are a special kind of nightmare. You sign a scroll written in legalese so convoluted that not even a seasoned lawyer, and they definitely don't exist in your world, could decipher it. You think you're signing up for a year of fights. Turns out, the contract is lifetime. If you survive, maybe you'll get a few extra months of forced labor packing amphorae. And your pay? A paltry sum of coins that buys you exactly 1 honey-glazed date a week. Often by the time you get to the market, the vendor's already sold out to wealthier spectators who prefer roasted dormice. The real fun starts when showtime approaches. On the day of your debut, you're paraded through the streets of Rome to thunderous applause. Or it feels that way until you realize most people are just cheering the possibility of free entertainment, not your personal brand. You're thrust into the Colosseum's entrance tunnel, where the sunlight hits your sweat-soaked skin and the roar of the crowd swells like a wave of madness. Armor? Optional. Some Lannisti think it's better entertainment if you appreciate every blade up close. You end up draped in mismatched spectacle pieces, a flimsy helmet that pinches your forehead, a half-broken shield held together by hopes and prayers, and greaves so tight they cut off circulation. But hey, at least you look the part. Your opponent could be a fellow gladiator trained just as poorly, or a beast imported from the furthest reaches of the empire. Lions, tigers, yes, but also lurking in the shadows, angry elephants with an arthritic gait. When the gates creak open, you step onto sand stain darker than your future prospects. The first clang of sword on shield is music to your ears, if you're into metallic shrieks and muffled cries. Every strike you make is met with a roar, from the crowd begging for blood, your body begging for mercy, and your heart begging for a luxury you can't even pronounce. Like a day without imminent death. Time becomes elastic. Seconds stretch into minutes as you duel for survival. You're constantly calculating, evade left, thrust right, maybe drop your guard to confuse him. It's like high-stakes chess, except a wrong move means checkmate in your chest cavity. And speaking of audience reactions, forget constructive criticism. There are no nice parry or good form murmurs. The crowd demands gore. More thrusts. Show us a kill. They vote with thumbs, up for sparing, down for death. But those signals are often as clear as the Emperor's midday bathroom schedule. 1 minute you see a thumb up, next minute someone's flipping you off. It's cruel, capricious, and completely arbitrary. Basically modern social media without the ad revenue. Should you find a miraculous opening and dispatch your opponent, don't expect a victory lap. You'll limp off the sand, half your limbs intact, half your dignity shredded, and look forward to the medical tent staffed by barbers, because in ancient Rome, barbers doubled as surgeons. Their toolbox? A chisel, some wine, and a prayer. If your leg looks set, they wrap it in bandages so tight you'll get acquainted with necrosis. But hey, at least you still have a leg, unlike your opponent, whose name you never knew, but whose legacy will last until the vultures pick it clean. If you survive multiple bouts, consider yourself lucky, or unlucky, depending on your threshold for pain. You'll earn the coveted rudies, a wooden sword symbolizing freedom, after roughly 10 to 20 victories, or 10 to 20 years of servitude, whichever comes first. Guess which one is more likely? By then, you're an old gladiator, a testament to perseverance, iron deficiency, and unresolved PTSD. And what of retirement? You'll be sent to a villa near Ostia, where you'll join other ex-combatants who share one dream, never having to fight again. But the villa's more like a rustic work camp. You'll manage monkeys, train donkeys, and haul amphorae to crowded taverns. They've traded the Colosseum for a vineyard, still backbreaking, still thankless, and still punctuated by echoes of past screams. So why would anyone sign up as a gladiator? For fame? For glory? For that fleeting moment when a packed arena chants your name? It's the same reason people do risky reality TV stunts today, for a shot at immortality, however twisted. You hope to escape oblivion by becoming a legend, only to discover that legends are rewritten by historians who prefer clean narratives, not the blood-stained reality you lived. In this brutal school of survival, every day is a lesson in existential dread. Your purpose is entertainment, your fate is audience whim, and your reward is the faintest hope of living to see the next sunrise. And that, dear viewers, is why it sucked to be a gladiator in ancient Rome, where dreams bled out on sand and every cheer might be your last. Your second week as a gladiator in ancient Rome kicks off with the same thunderous rooster crow that has been your daily soundtrack since induction. But now that you've survived your debut, you've earned slightly better lodging, read, a thicker straw, mat. Never underestimate the power of marginal improvements when your baseline is sweaty rat nest. Each morning, you roll out of your bunk into a communal wash trough, where the water is so cold and shallow you question if anyone actually dug that pit, or if they just tripped and called it a feature. A half-frozen sponge is your only friend as you scrub off the crust of yesterday's adrenaline and yesterday's half-digested boiled lentils. Today's training regimen is light cardio, meaning you sprint laps around the ludus grounds while a pair of hulking trainees lob wooden darts at you to simulate an ambush. The idea is to teach you situational awareness. The reality is they're short on darts, so you spend most of your time zigzagging like a demented gazelle, while the darts miss you by literal inches. Each near miss is punctuated by your drill sergeant's victory roar, because nothing says good job like being nearly impaled by splintered wood. After cardio comes weapons mastery. Today's lesson, the trident and net combination favored by the Retiarius class. You're handed a rusty three-pronged spear with a shaft that creaks ominously and a net woven so loosely that it's as effective at capturing opponents as a fishmonger's apron. Your instructor, an ex-retiarius who lost half his fingers in an overzealous net-snapping incident, demonstrates the technique: fling the net, stab the prey while they're tangled, rinse and repeat. He then proceeds to test it on you, wrapping the net around your ankle and watching you stumble into the clay wall. Embarrassing? Yes. Educational? Also yes, because now you know exactly where that clay wall impacts your kneecap. Midday brings the mandatory Gladiator Symposium, a brief lecture on the political significance of blood sports, delivered by a toga-clad scholar who seems bewildered by the very concept of violence. You nod politely as he waxes poetic about virtues, honor, and moral uplift, buzzwords that feel as hollow as your helmet when you put it on. You study his face closely, looking for a hint of self-awareness. Is he aware that his entire career exists to justify the spectacle of you versus a charging bear? His expression stays fixed in academic smugness. You scribble the Latin terms in your codex, the same scroll where you've been tallying your bribe money to the camp rats. Lunch is rations again. Today's special is split pea soup with shards of bone for texture. The revitalizing properties are questionable, but your digestive tract has long since adapted to defy all nutritional logic. You dunk your bread in the broth, chew once, and swallow. Congratulations, you've just consumed the lunch of a champion. The afternoon is reserved for psychological conditioning. This means you're strapped into a wooden dummy shaped like a gladiator and pelted with rotten fruit to simulate crowd booing. Tomatoes, gourds, figs. You dodge where you can, but half of the produce splatters across your face, turning your helmet padding into a sticky, fermented mess. The lanista calls it toughening your spirit. You call it, why does no one ever supply a towel? As twilight nears, word spreads that tonight's exhibition will pit novice gladiators against each other in a team match. Partners are assigned by lottery. You end up with a lanky, hyperactive Thracian named Draxus, who insists on shouting pre-fight poetry while brandishing a curved falx scimitar like he's auditioning for a street play. You're less than enthused. Your first match nearly killed you. A match alongside someone who raps his war chant mid-duel seems certain to kill you faster. The crowd is smaller than for official games, just a few hundred spectators who paid the bare minimum for entry. Still, they clamor for action. The sand in this smaller arena, actually a repurposed livestock pen, is loose and uneven, so footing is treacherous. Your team's objective: knock down the opposing duo without running out of air. Simple, right? The bell, a conch shell blast from the lanista, signals the start. Draxus charges forward with a battle cry that would wake the dead. You follow, gripping your gladius so tightly your knuckles whiten. The opposing Thracians volley javelins. One finds its mark in Draxus's thigh. He yelps in shock, stumbles, and you step in, slashing the first opponent's hamstring. He collapses like a rag doll. But bloodlust is contagious. The second opponent lunges at you with a desperate swing. You parry, twist, and gut him in one clean stroke. Victory is yours. The crowd erupts in cheers so loud your ears ring for days. Draxus hobbles over to slap you on the back, hard enough to send you sprawling. Post-fight, you're whisked away to the infirmary tent. It's run by a barber surgeon who's reading a medical treatise titled De Corpore Scindendo on the art of unsurprising disembowelment. He doesn't bother to clean your wound before sewing it up with a curved needle dipped in wine. Wine disinfects, he assures you, and if it doesn't, it at least numbs the pain. You catch a whiff of the fermenting grape as he stitches. You also catch a whiff of your own fear as you realize you might survive, but fully intact only if the gods smile on your sutures. That night, you're too wired, or too hopped up on adrenaline, to sleep. Instead, you wander the barracks courtyard and join other survivors in debating the finer points of armor configuration. If you wear greaves, snakes can't coil around your shins, but then you can't sprint. Helmets with plumes look regal, but they're just crown-sized bullseyes. These midnight speculations carry you through until exhaustion claims you like an abusive ex, suddenly, uncontrollably, and leaving you wondering where all your dignity went. The next dawn, you learn you've been selected for a special demonstration at the Ludus Maximus, a grand show meant to impress visiting senators. The event is not a lethal combat, but a choreographed reenactment of a famous myth, the tragic tale of Theseus and the Minotaur. You'll play the Minotaur, donning an elaborate wooden mask with real bull horns affixed. Your opponent, a fellow Glad, will play Theseus wielding a 9-foot spear. The catch? The spears are blunt, but the mask's horns are real, and heavy enough to give you a hernia if you bob your head the wrong way. You spend the day rehearsing intricate steps, emerge from a maze of cloth walls, snort 3 times to signal your arrival, roar, and chase the hero for exactly 30 seconds. The final pose, horn lowered, bloodless wooden sword raised overhead. The illusion of death is everything. Your coach reminds you, if the mask falls off or the seam rips, you're responsible for the fiasco, and your pay might be redirected to the repair bill. You swallow hard. The only thing you're adept at repairing is your shattered pride. Showtime arrives. The maze is set up in a vast amphitheater courtyard. A semicircle of dignitaries watches from cushioned seats, luxuries you can't even utter without feeling personal resentment. As you step through the maze exit, you're hit by a blast of torchlight, a puff of smoke from hidden flutes, and the faint scent of burning incense, imported from Egypt no less, because Rome spares no expense on propaganda. You snort grandly, but the mask's nostril slits are misaligned, so you mostly sound like a goat with indigestion. You adjust by lifting the mask slightly, and immediately feel the horns press into your forehead. The rehearsal pays off. You charge, the crowd ooze, Theseus deflects, you pivot, he lunges, you trip on your own horns, and both of you tumble dramatically into the dust. A few spectators gasp, more laugh. The senators exchange smirks that say, "Ah yes, our brave militia." You scramble up, mask askew, and finish the 30-second chase with the grace of a drunk elephant. The final pose is adequate. The crowd claps politely. Your coach pats you on the shoulder and whispers, "Not bad for a bull with a twig brain." You're paid half a denarius for the gig, not enough for dinner, let alone a new mask. Within hours, rumors spread that Emperor Vespasian himself might attend the next official games, sparking a frenzy among the Lanistae to showcase their best blood-splattered performers. You're thrust into a promotional march through the forum, handcuffed in pairs, sandals clanking, gladiator banners trailing behind. Citizens line the streets, offering curses, coins, and at least 1 bucket of goat's blood. You're not sure why. It's publicity, it's madness, it's your life. Each jeer reminds you you're a commodity, a walking, bleeding billboard for Roman superiority. Back at the Ludus, you find a letter sealed with wax, the rarest form of mail. It's from a wealthy patron asserting interest in sponsoring you, provided you survive the upcoming melee. "I admire your spirit," it says. "Train harder, I shall reward excellence." You flush with pride until you realize sponsor in this context means he'll bet on your death and take half the winnings if you perish spectacularly. Congratulations, you've acquired a sugar daddy who wants you dead. Brimming with grim resolve, you dive into preparations for the forthcoming games. You experiment with makeshift padding under your greaves to prevent shin splinters. You bargain with the camp's cook for extra garum sauce to mask the blandness of your meals. You devise secret hand signals with a fellow thrall so you can coordinate surprise attacks during team bouts. Every scrap of advantage feels like snagging a pebble in a storm. Infinitesimal, but maybe enough to tip fate in your favor. As part 2 draws to a close, you lie awake on your straw mat and reflect on your journey so far. You've faced barbed tridents, rotten produce, and the fickle whims of mob mentality. You've dodged death in small pens and performed mock mythological battles for a fraction of a denarius. You've discovered the moral high ground is an abstract concept when you're scraping marrow from goat bones. But you've also tasted fleeting triumph, those split seconds when the crowd roars your name, when your blade finds its mark, when your limbs still belong to you. Tomorrow, you'll step back into the sand, armed with raw courage, brittle armor, and half-baked schemes. Will you triumph? Will you endure? Or will you become another anonymous stain on the Colosseum floor? Only the gods, and the entertainment-hungry masses, know for sure. Strap in, dear viewer, because if you thought the first fortnight was brutal, you haven't seen anything yet. Your gladiator's nightmare is only just beginning. Dawn breaks over the Ludus Maximus like a slow-motion Roman triumph. If triumphs involved more groaning limbs than victorious horsemanship, you awake to the clang of bronze pots being thrown together for breakfast, signaling the start of the big day. Today, the arena gates will open wide for Emperor Vespasian himself, and the Lannistae have convinced you that surviving this spectacle might actually net you a bonus. Assuming bonus doesn't refer to an extra shift hauling sewage, you haul yourself from your bunk, joints screaming reformations more radical than Caesar's, and don your meticulously patched armor. If it weren't for the gouges and crude stitches, you'd almost feel regal. Your fellow gladiators mill around, each donning their battle regalia with varying degrees of confidence. Draxus, ever the theatrical type, has redecorated his plumed helmet with peacock feathers pilfered from the noble stalls, because nothing says fear me like a bird of paradise headpiece. A murmured debate ripples through the ranks. Are feathers aerodynamic? Do they offer psychological advantage? The nearest Thracian shrugs, tasting the air for portents of doom. A camp hand slaps you on the back, spilling wine into your tunic. He apologizes in meditative tones. That's the Emperor's vintage. Good luck avoiding him. After a half-hearted sponge bath, effectively a ritual splash of water to convince yourself you're not actually a caked mud sculpture, you assemble in the courtyard. A herald in full regalia reads out your matchups in booming Latin, though you catch only Aulus verses. Kavros, tribal melee, and beast hunt. Your stomach does a somersault. You're rostered for both the team fight and the one-on-one against a heavily muscled Gaul who looks like he bench presses entire oak trees before breakfast. A final pep talk from your Lanista is delivered with all the subtlety of a hammer blow to the skull. Remember, men, today you fight for glory, for Rome, and for the favor of the Emperor. Fail, and you entertain geography's next lesson, feeding insects to the worms. Somehow, this feels less motivational and more like a threat of bug buffa. You nod along, fiercely determining to turn that threat into a question. Will the worms remember you fondly? As you file towards the Flavian amphitheater, the ground rumbles with the clatter of thousands of sandals. Merchants peddle dried figs, spiced sausages, and novelty wooden arrows as souvenirs, complete with inscriptions like, "I survived the arena." Mostly. You resist the urge to purchase anything, mindful that your coin pouch holds barely enough for one, saffron-dusted olive. The colossal stone gates grow before you, carved with reliefs of mythical beasts devouring hapless mortals, a fitting welcome sign. Stepping onto the sand is like walking into history's bloodiest scrapbook. The air is thick with incense and expectation. The cheering crowd undulates like a colossal wave. You check your grip on the gladius, adjust the strap on your cingulum, and swallow. The Emperor sits beneath a gilded canopy, eyes scanning the masses. You sense his gaze settle on you for a split second. Did he nod? Or was that indigestion? You'll ponder this detail for years, or at least until your next meal. First bout, the tribal melee. Your first trial is a small-scale melee pitting 2 squads of 4 against each other. Teams wear colored sashes. Yours a dubious shade of muddy maroon. The Lanista pairs you with 3 muscle-bound veterans, all of whom glare at you like a fellow gladiator who ate their dinner. You catch whispers of tactics, form a wedge, shield wall, press left flank. You nod sagely, secretly thinking a wedge of your helmet might splinter at first encounter. At the blast of a conch shell, mayhem erupts. Sand flies as bodies collide. You thrust, parry, and trip over insolent pebbles. One veteran is knocked senseless by a bludgeoning blow. Another cracks his knee against a hidden rock. They cry out like wounded roosters, turning the melee into a backyard brawl. You seize the moment, sliding along the gritty sand to land a shallow cut on a Sarmatian's calf. He limps away, swearing vengeance in guttural syllables. But victory tastes of rust and regret. With 2 of your team down, you're forced into an unlikely partnership with Draxus, still sporting his peacock plumes, who battles with the agility of someone perpetually auditioning for a tragedy. Together, you flank the remaining foes, Draxus chanting an impromptu war chant that contains at least 3 anachronisms and 1 shouted promise to their mothers. The Sarmatians crumble beneath your unlikely alliance, and the melee ends with your side victorious. The crowd's half-hearted cheers feel tempered by confusion. Is this triumph or farce? You stumble off the sand, wiping sweat and sand from your eyes. Victory has earned you an extra ration of salted pork. Thankfully, not quite as woody as previous cuts. You wolf it down, cursing the digestive gods for giving you taste buds. Second bout, one-on-one with the Gaul. After scarce respite, you're summoned for your solo match. The Gaul stands imposing at the other end of the arena. the product of a breeding program for man-mountains, each one louder and larger than the last. He flexes muscles that could probably crush a grape into paste. You grip your gladius so hard you suspect it might implode. Steel meets steel. His hammer-like sword whips toward your ribs. You barely deflect it, feeling the shockwave travel up your arm. You counter with a feeble jab that glances off his broad shoulder. He snorts like a bull before the matador's cape, then charges, sending you skidding back. You perform a skillful feint, practiced precisely once in the last fortnight, and surprise him with a glancing slash across his knee. He roars in pain, and perhaps surprised that you landed anything at all. This motivates him. Blood spurts, armor dents, and your ears ring with each swing. You trade blows, your blade singing as it strikes his shield. 2 heartbeats later, you misjudge distance and take a direct hit to the calf. Your leg buckles, you taste copper in your mouth. Pumping adrenaline carries you forward, self-preservation being a powerful motivator, so you hurl yourself at him, wrap your arm around his waist, and force him off balance. Both of you collapse into the sand. For a moment, you're entangled, wrestling like dogs. Then, in a desperate twist, you swing the pommel of your sword into his temple. He convulses and slumps. The referee steps in. The horn blows. The match ends. You stand unsteady. Your leg throbs. The crowd's roar could flatten hills, though you can't discern whether they cheer your skill or just relish spilled Gaulish blood. Aid workers, barber surgeons in need of tips, shuttle you off stage. They bandage your wound, grumbling about imbalanced pay. If you bleed royalty's blood, you'd have a palace. But here you are. You grunt in agreement, contemplating the wisdom of monarchical ancestry. Interlude, political posturing. While you recover, the arena transforms for the final spectacle, the grand beast hunt. This is the zenith of Vespasian's propaganda. Romans versus the wilds of empire. Exotic beasts are led in cages. Asiatic leopards, North African hippos, and a cargo of Nile crocodiles, glazed over like prehistoric tanks. You're strapped into the fray alongside a rotating cast of veterans. Everyone must demonstrate their mettle. Your weapon for this act, a spear so long it resembles a makeshift fish impaling device. The senators file in, their togas freshly laundered and laundered again to remove any hint of bloodstain. You sense their judgy stares. They clutch lotus-emblazoned fans to ward off the stink of sweat and death. At their head sits the emperor, sinewy behind a curtain of bejeweled gold fringe, surveying you like cattle before a feast. The gates open. The leopards leap with feline grace, jaws snapping. You lunge your spear. It meets fur and muscle, but barely pierces. One grasp and twist later, you're airborne, flung into the air like an offering to Mars. You land on sand. Hard, cold, abrasive. Glasses shatter from the podium. Latin curses mix with screams. A fellow gladiator screams, "Don't let it get to your throat," which is excellent advice, except you're far more concerned it'll bite your kneecap. You scramble upright, rally weaponless. Using guile, you bait the beast into charging past you, then plunge the spear into its flank as it rushes by. The leopard falters, bleeds out onto the sand, and collapses. You gasp for air, adrenaline spiking as the crowd roars and the emperor applauds. Once, like a reluctant stamp of imperial approval. The hippos lumber next, deceptively slow but capable of turning you into omelette in 2 steps. You and 2 others herd them toward a narrow chute, forcing them to fight each other, a tactic that reads like clever warfare but feels like spectator sport in reverse. Their tusks gore one another. You dodge foam-flecked jaws and skewer one in the shoulder. It crashes against the stone wall, unconscious. You wipe gore from your visor, your own or the beast's, you can't tell. Finally, the crocodiles, jaws like siege engines. Your spear is lost in the chaos. You resort to kicking, punching, anything to stay out of the snapping maws. A gladius-wielding comrade saves you at the last moment, slashing at the beast's scaly hide. Together, you topple the last crocodile. Exhausted, you collapse onto the sand amid swirling dust and dying roars. The emperor's horn blows thrice. Your trial by beasts is declared a success. Aftermath and reflection. Night falls as you're dragged back to the barracks, bloodied, bruised, and begrudgingly alive. Your leg throbs enough to compose a symphony of agony. Yet, as you limp into the courtyard, the surviving gladiators greet you with nods of respect. The camp rat who ate your rations looks at you anew, its beady eyes reflecting your scarred armor. A messenger delivers your payout, 10 denarii, barely enough to bribe a stable hand for a horse ride out of the city. You pocket the coins, the weight of survival mixed with irony. You worked like a beast, fought beasts and men alike, and earned as much as a shoe black. But you're still breathing, and tomorrow, the fourth and final part of your tale approaches, the grand finale, where glory and doom converge in the sand one last time. So rest, dear viewer. Strap on a makeshift ice pack, attend to your wounded pride, and steel yourself for the ultimate showdown. In Part 4, the Emperor visits, new alliances form, betrayals unfold, and your Gladiator saga reaches its blood-soaked climax. Until then, may your dreams be merciful, and slightly less gory than reality. Dawn breaks over the Colosseum like a greasy spit roasting a lamb, inevitable, blistering, and destined to leave you wondering why you ever signed up for this. Today is the grand finale, the Munera Magnus, the big show that will decide everything. Your fame, your fortune, and most likely, your fate. You haul yourself from your bunk with the grace of a broken statue, every joint creaking as if plotting its own rebellion. Your body is a catalog of aches. The right shoulder protests any upward motion. The left calf still pulses in rhythm with your heartbeat. In your pride? Well, that's been on life support since Part 1. You find Draxus in the courtyard, preening his peacock plumes in a mirrored bronze shield as if auditioning for a tragedy. Behold, the herald of doom, he intones, thrusting his chest forward. You grunt in greeting, managing a half-hearted nod. He flutters a feather at you. You ready for glory? He chirps. You glance down at your battered gladius and patched greaves. I'm ready for breakfast, you reply, because if I survive this, I want one last decent meal. The barracks cook obliges, stale bread, watery goat's milk, and a handful of dried figs that taste like fossilized raisins. You choke them down while listening to the Elenista bark orders. Armor, weapons, shields, don't make me remind you that the Emperor himself will be watching. Translation, if you fuck this up, you'll never see another sunrise. You tighten the straps on your cingulum, pat your helmet to ensure it's not wobbly, and tuck your leather skirt against your thighs. Each movement reminds you that your body is a relic in progress. By mid-morning, you're herded through the service tunnels beneath the amphitheater, a procession of gladiators polishing their battle faces with mud and sweat. The stench of incense and blood gets stronger the closer you get to the arena floor. A pair of attendants hands you a garland of bay leaves, an honor reserved for those slated to face off in the final bout. The wreath feels heavy, like the weight of every life you've taken and every life that could still snuff out yours. You nestle it atop your helmet, hoping it'll make you look heroic instead of haggard. The gates open with a thunderous creak. The roar of the crowd is a living thing, rising in waves that buffet you like a gale. Sunlight glitters off marble columns and gilded statues. You step onto the sand, every grain reminding you of past gashes. The Emperor sits aloft, draped in purple robes that proclaim his power. He nods imperceptibly, perhaps at you, perhaps at the idiot in gold-painted armor who slipped on a stray olive pit 2 years ago. You won't overthink it. Your final challenge is twofold, a bestiarius against a captive rhinoceros, followed immediately by a duel against your fellow champion, the Gaul you nearly strangled in Part 3. The Lanista calls it a demonstration of versatility. You call it the stupidest thing I've ever signed a contract for. First Act, Rhinoceros Rampage. The spectacle begins with the beast hunt. A rhinoceros, massive, armored in keratin scales and smelling like a swamp's wet dream, is led into the arena. Its handler waves a tattered banner to coax it forward, but the creature snorts and paws the sand, exuding indifference. Its horn, thick as an oak branch, gleams ominously. You grip your spear, a long barbed affair intended to pierce thick hides, and glare at your quarry. The signal horn blasts, the crowd surges in expectation. You sprint forward, heart thudding so loud you wonder if the Emperor can hear it. The rhino charges, faster than you'd anticipate for something half-walled in flesh. You brace for impact, planting the spear shaft into its flank. It jolts, but the horn barely scratches the hide. The crowd gasps, you skid sideways, the sand eating at your ankles. The rhino pivots, nostrils flaring steam. You realize spear-only tactics won't suffice. You duck behind a battered pillar, Shout a quick prayer to Mars, and bait the beast into a chase. Its massive bulk shakes the arena floor, sending nearby spectators leaning backward. You dart around the pillar and thrust upward, catching the soft underbelly between ridges of armor plating. The horn ruptures flesh, the rhino bellows a world-ending sound. Sand sprays as it staggers, then collapses with a seismic thud that rattles bones in the Colosseum's foundations. Silence blankets the arena for 2 heartbeats, enough for the crowd to realize they just witnessed something monumental. Then the roar returns, deafening, as if the entire population of Rome experienced a collective joygasm. You stand panting, spear dripping, chest heaving. The emperor taps his ivory staff, his stamp of approval. You allow yourself a grim smile. 1 down, 1 to go. Second act, champions duel. Before you can catch your breath or wipe rhino goo from your greaves, the gates on the opposite side swing open. Your Gaulish adversary steps forth, muscles glistening under the sun, eyes blazing with a mix of bloodlust and personal vendetta. His sponsor has bet heavily on his victory, so he's itching to reclaim honor and coin. You raise your shield in greeting. He snarls, "Oh, today you die." You both brandish your swords. The signal horn sounds again. This is it. Gladiator versus gladiator. Mortal stakes, ambiguous glory. You circle each other, shields at the ready, eyes scanning for opening. He swings first, an overhead strike that cleaves the air above your head. You barely deflect it, feeling a shock go through your arm. The crowd gasps. You grit your teeth. You feint left, then step inside his guard, jabbing at his thigh. Steel scrapes bone, eliciting a grunt of pain. The crowd roars, fueling your adrenaline. He counters with a series of rapid slashes. You parry as best you can, but one blade severs the leather thong binding your greave. Your calf is exposed. Instinctively, you hop back, but the uneven sand sends you stumbling. One of your worst nightmares. The Gaul charges. You brace for impact, then twist at the last second, catching his ribs with the flat of your blade. He doubles over, winded. You seize the moment, a precise upward thrust beneath his guard, puncturing lung, enough to force him to his knees. Time seems to dilate. You watch the blood bloom on his tunic, the steam rising from the sand. His eyes meet yours. No hatred, no mercy, just recognition of 2 warriors bound by fate. He drops his sword. The referee raises your hand. The crowd's roar collapses time back into normality as cheers thunder. The emperor stands, applauding once. A single clapped shell echoes like a final benediction. Aftermath, the inevitable bargains. As the Gaul is helped off the sand, perhaps to rendezvous with the worms, you stand center arena. The crowd stamps feet, waves handkerchiefs, and tosses coins. You collect a handful as a gesture, coins that might buy enough for a proper meal, or at least a single date that isn't petrified into cement. A lute player strums a triumphant tune. You bow awkwardly, limbs trembling. Behind a curtain of red drapes, the emperor beckons. You approach, posture regal, ish. He extends a hand, then hands you a rudis, the wooden sword signifying your freedom. The weight of it is astonishing, not as heavy as your gladius, but laden with promise. You glance at your sponsor in the stands. He looks furious, mouth twisted in a sneer. His bet just died, along with his champion. A delicious thought. The emperor gives a rare smile, more a twitch of the mouth than a grin, before signaling the crowd. The masses erupt, chanting, "Libertas, libertas, freedom, freedom." You lift the rudis overhead. The crowd goes wild. You feel tears sting on your dusty cheeks. Not tears of joy, more like tears of relief that you're still alive, still breathing. You've survived, you've triumphed, you've earned your freedom in an empire built on chains. Epilogue. A new beginning. Sort of. That night, as the moon hangs low over Rome, you return to the barracks one last time. The empty bunks echo with memories. The whip cracks, the clang of steel, the moans of the wounded. Your former comrades, some broken, some dead, some free, have left their marks in the wood and straw. You pack your few belongings, a battered helmet, a rusty gladius, the bay leaf wreath, and your precious rudis. Outside the ludus, you haggle with a carriage driver for passage across the Tiber. He demands a denarius. You reach into your pouch, just enough. As the cart bounces over cobblestones, You gaze back at the sprawling amphitheater, its arches glowing under torchlight. You feel a tug in your gut, nostalgia, fear, or maybe the lingering buzz of survival. You lean back, chest heaving, tasting the cool night air. Your destination is uncertain, a small farm on the empire's edge, a merchant's villa in Ostia, or perhaps the distant provinces where life is cheaper and death is slower. Wherever you go, you'll carry scars, both visible and hidden, in tales no tavern bard would believe. You'll tell wild stories of charging rhinoceroses, psalteries of political intrigue, and the fickle heartbeat of the mob. You'll recount the time you bested the Gaul and earned your freedom with nothing but grit and a crooked smile. But for now, as you drift toward what passes for rest in an ex-gladiator's life, you allow yourself one indulgence, a half smile at the absurdity of it all. You signed up for fame and glory. You got a lifetime subscription to pain and survival. Yet here you stand, rudies in hand, future unknown, and heart pounding with the thrill of being alive. If that isn't the sweetest irony, what is? So here ends your saga. From a scared rookie wobbling into the arena to a battle-hardened champion walking into the night, you've lived and bled for entertainment. You've known fear, tasted death, and embraced freedom. And as you vanish into the dark, remember, in ancient Rome, freedom was the rarest prize, and you earned it in the most spectacular fashion possible. Farewell, dear viewer. May your battles, literal or metaphorical, be fought with courage, your scars become your glory, and your stories be as absurdly unforgettable as mine. And if ever you think you've had a bad day, just remember, at least you weren't charging a horny rhinoceros under the emperor's gaze. Imagine waking up shackled atop a granite altar as chanting priests loom overhead, their ceremonial knives gleaming like promises of doom. You thought your worst hangover was brutal. Welcome to the afterlife audition you never signed up for. Before your heart stops racing, get ready to like and subscribe. If you enjoy watching people discover that immortality in ancient Egypt comes with a major catch, now lower the lights, draw a deep breath if you still can, and let's unravel why you absolutely wouldn't survive a sacrificial ritual on the banks of the Nile. You slump awake on rough-hewn stone, the desert sun already a molten pustule on the horizon. Your wrists burn where the copper shackles bite, and every breath tastes like sand and incense. Last thing you remember was a harmless tour of the temple of Amun-Ra, until the guard shoved you into a hidden corridor, chanting for the well-being of the kingdom like it's a get-out-of-responsibility free card. They march you past polished alabaster columns carved with scenes of pharaohs smiting enemies. Ironic decor, considering you're next in line. The corridor echoes with the clatter of your sandals and the priest's rhythmic dirge, each footstep a reminder that escape isn't part of today's itinerary. A painter's palette of auburn stains smears the walls, the residue of previous volunteers who discovered too late that their devotion meant destination. Death. A tall priest draped in ostrich feather regalia greets you with a grin that would unsettle a sphinx. He traces the hieroglyphic tattoos on your arms, apparently a trendy souvenir from your backpacking days. Perfect, he purrs. Your markings will please the gods. You consider explaining that your tattoos are actually sunburns from last summer, but the iron grip on your elbow silences any protest. Your preparation involves kneeling before an enormous statue of Amun-Ra. Gold leaf gleams so brightly your pupils contract like frightened cats. A swarm of acolytes anoints you with perfumed oils infused with frankincense and ground lotus petals, so heavy you're convinced they're mixing mortar for your final tomb. Each droplet slides down your neck in rivulets pooling at your collarbone. You shiver, partly from fear, partly from the cold Nile breeze sneaking through uncovered windows. Next, they fasten a linen kilt around your waist, cinched so tight you can't inhale fully, apparently to humble the flesh. You hobble forward, wincing, as sandstone steps lead into the hypostyle hall. Towering papyrus columns rise like sentinels overhead. Their painted capitals depict winged scarabs rolling the sun god's orb. You pray fervently that none of these beetles remember you. An oracle priestess, face hidden behind a gold filigree mask, begins the ritual recital, praises to Ra, entreaties to Osiris for rebirth, and demands for perfect transition. To you, it sounds less like spiritual guidance and more like final exam. Instructions where failure equals permanent registration in a mummy condo. The congregation's hushed Amen-style calls echo off stone, punctuating each arcane phrase. Suddenly, the high priest steps forward with the ceremonial blade, a curved khopesh so ornate it looks surgical and lethal. He demonstrates the so-called blessed incision on a calf. A quick flourish, a slit, and the animal's blood spills into a gilded basin. The crowd murmurs approval. This is their B-roll for ensuring seasonal flooding in pharaoh prosperity. You blink twice, imagining yourself in place of that heifer, and your stomach contorts in a way that counts as prayer in priestly circles. They position you atop the altar, feet secured in carved indentations, arms stretched beneath carved lotus motifs. A fan bearer wafts cooling palm fronds over you, a final indulgence before, well, you scan the marble for cracks. Maybe you can slide yourself off. No dice. The granite is perfectly smooth, and the hem of your kilt barely brushes the ledge. The high priest raises the khopesh. The hall falls silent. Your pulse reverberates in your ears like tribal drums as you contemplate the absurdity. You traveled thousands of miles to witness wonders of antiquity, only to become one. The priests chant louder, the incense grows thicker, and your vision edges toward chiaroscuro. But before that fatal moment, a single thought claws through the haze. I should have stayed home. And that, dear viewer, is precisely why you wouldn't survive a sacrificial ritual in ancient Egypt, because the gods demand perfection, the priests demand compliance, and your only bargaining chip is the thinnest thread of hope. Stay tuned for part 2, where we dissect the gruesome cleansing rites, the stomach-churning libations, and the unexpected role of crocodiles in ensuring you don't make it home alive. You awake in a haze of incense smoke thicker than the marsh, mists along the Nile, disoriented enough to wonder if you've already passed through the veil. Your wrists sting where the copper shackles still cling, though now the metal is embroidered with lotus motifs, sacrificial luxury, or just another layer of cursed bling. A pair of acolytes drape a fresh linen shawl across your shoulders. Its fringed ends tickle your collarbone as they heft you upright. Time for the cleansing, intones a mellifluous voice that would sound comforting if you weren't about to be drenched in holy sewage. The cleansing rites, you learn, involve 4 steps: the salt of Apep, the scourge of Set, the dew of Isis, and the anointment of Osiris. Only the pure ascend. Everyone else becomes mummy fodder. First, the salt of Apep. You're led to a basin the size of a small bathing pool, brimming with water churned by salt crystals harvested from the Dead Sea. The minute your bare feet hit the ice-cold water, your toes shriek in protest. A quartet of nubile acolytes toss handfuls of gritty salt into the basin, and the water turns cloudy, brackish. You're instructed to kneel, then scrub your limbs raw with bundles of dried papyrus reeds bound with sinew. Every stroke peels layers of skin like the pages of an unwanted tomb scroll. You try to wince silently, but the crowd's chanting crescendos each time you hiss. Once your skin tingles with abrasive clarity, they lift you free and wrap your legs in rough burlap, just enough to grind salt residue into your calves as you shuffle forward. Each step feels like walking across broken sun-baked pottery. You promise yourself you'll never complain about sand in your shoes again if you somehow make it out alive. Next, the scourge of Set. A flank of scarlet-robed priests brandish willow rods dipped in a potent resin concoction, some cruel cross between pine pitch and ground chili pods. With religious zeal, they administer lashes across your back and glutes, each crack landing with a wet thud that echoes off the temple walls. The resin's fiery sting sears flesh, and as the first lashes land, you hear a single spectator exclaim, "Observe the flesh of the chosen." The irony drips thicker than the resin oozing down your spine. You try to recite a mantra under your breath, something about Osiris's compassion, but it's drowned out by the collective groan of your sore muscles. By the 20th strike, you're howling in half-baked prayer while the rods crack against your shoulder blades. Your skin hums, your mind swims, and for a fleeting second, you imagine that wooden altar is made of marshmallows. Then a final blow snaps you back. The final lash plunges the rod through a small pool of your own sweat and blood, baptizing you in your own sacrificial marinade. They pause. The high priest circles you, inspecting the welts like a jeweler appraising a gemstone. "Acceptable," he declares, stroking his beard carved from crocodile tusk. You bleed enough. With that stamp of approval, you're dragged forward to the third rite, the dew of Isis. Now they pour a milky white potion into your trembling hands. It smells of honey, lotus, and something decidedly off. You're told to rub it liberally across your torso, face, and the backs of your knees. As you smear the lotion on, it seeps into your wounds, burning like embers dropped into open sores. Instinctively, you recoil, but the acolytes force your hands back into place. The potion foams against the salt-scoured skin, forming tiny bubbles that burst with a sizzle. A spectator's child recoils in horror. The crowd's chanting falters for the first time. A ripple of uneasy laughter sweeps through. The dew scorches itself into your flesh, leaving whirls of red mist behind. Your bones feel cooked from the inside, as though the gods decided to test Egyptian cuisine on living models. The high priest solemnly nods, declaring, "You are cleansed of impurity." A whiff of smug pride drifts off him like a rotting lotus. Finally, the anointment of Osiris. They produce an alabaster jar filled with a thick black substance, some blend of crushed myrrh, ground obsidian, and vials of embalming fluid. With ritual gravitas, they daub it on your chest in the hieroglyphic shape of the Djed pillar, a promise of stability in the afterlife. But this ointment is perhaps the worst of all. It seeps into the deepest crevices of your wounds, eliciting fresh screams that echo like death hymns. You catch sight of the basin where your blood now floats like oil slicks. The basin oozes over the rim onto the tiled floor, mixing with discarded palm fronds and the first rite's salty brine. For a moment, everything goes black. Whether from syncope or a brief second sight of the duat, you can't tell. When you open your eyes, you're standing at the edge of a stone dock, overlooking the Nile's slow churn. Two colossal crocodile statues flank the dock, their mouths wide as if ready to swallow you whole. A priest in chainmail made of fish scales, aptly titled the Crocodile Herald, steps forward with an ivory spear tipped in obsidian. The priests chant an invocation to Sobek, god of crocodiles and unplanned aquatic dissections. From a hidden crypt beneath the dock, 3 live crocodiles emerge on chains, eyes gleaming like onyx beads. Their scales reflect torchlight in fractal patterns, and their sonic purrs resonate through the dock's planks. If you thought a bull's horns were terrifying, try facing a creature whose bite force could cleave bone like reed stalks. They shove you onto a shifting wooden platform above the water. Wet salted ropes bind your ankles, keeping you a full arm's length out of the reptilian reach. So they say. The Crocodile Herald speaks. Survive the waters of Sobek, and you shall live. Fail, and your spirit shall feed the wretched Crocodile King. His words hang in the humid air, heavy as death shrouds. With a grunt, he jerks the chains, and the crocodiles lurch forward. Their leathery jaws snap, uprooting the platform's wood chips. You flail, arms windmilling, trying to back away. The first lunge, fangs crashing mere inches from your calves, sends a spray of river water soaking your wounds. You gasp, lungs burning, as the second croc charges. You thrust your feet against the fraying ropes, giving yourself just enough leverage to dodge backwards, only to knock your ankles against the platform's edge. Your body reacts on pure instinct. Adrenaline floods your veins, vision narrows to tunnel focus, and you launch yourself skyward as the third croc snaps shut on empty air. You twist mid-air, slam your shoulder into the platform's beam, and somersault onto the dock. The crowd shrieks, a symphony of horror and exhilaration. One crocodile lunges, but a priest slashes its chain, taming it with cords soaked in natron and honey. You collapse, lungs heaving as acolytes hastily bind the crocs back to their mangled chains. Your body trembles, not from cold, for there is none, but from an unholy mix of fear and triumph. The high priest strides forward, tilting his mask down to reveal a thin, mocking smile. "Impressive," he croons. "You have passed Sobek's test, but do not mistake survival for salvation." Before you can catch your breath, or wonder what indignity they have in store next, they march you toward the sacrificial altar once more. The priest's dirge resumes, now laced with a triumphant urgency. You realize the entire cleansing was but prelude. The real climax awaits. Your mind flashes back to earlier tours, the hieroglyphs boasting of pharaohs renewing cosmic order, the lavish murals of priests interceding between mortals and gods. You marvel at how those same long-dead rulers orchestrated this lunatic pageant, a cosmic insurance policy paid in human flesh. Now, as you shuffle toward the altar, legs wobbly like papyrus stalks in the wind. You catch a glimpse of the Nile's waters lapping at the dock below. In another age, that river symbolized rebirth and renewal. Today, it stands as a silent witness to your impending fate. Impartial, eternal, and entirely unmoved by human suffering, you step onto the altar's edge, shackles rattling. The high priest raises the khopesh once more, its blade catching torchlight in a cruel wink. The crowd holds its breath, the priests chant louder, and the world shrinks to the distance between your chest and that gleaming curve of steel. In that singular heartbeat before the final blow, you reflect. The salt cleansed you of sin, the scourge purified your flesh, the dew anointed your wounds, Sobek's trial tested your will, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could arm you against the merciless certainty of the blade, and that, dear viewer, is why you wouldn't survive a sacrificial ritual in ancient Egypt, because in the land of gods made of gold and stories carved in stone, human lives were tools, expendable, interchangeable, and utterly powerless against divine theater. Stay tuned for part 3. We'll delve into the cosmic lottery of afterlife politicking, the rites of mummification that turn you into an art exhibit, and the final curtain call that not even the grandest pyramid can prevent. You wake on the altar's cold stone slab surrounded by flickering torches, ribs still echoing from the jump into Sobek's den. Your vision swims, half from the earlier torments, half from the oppressive reality that you've just endured 3 horrific rites, and the blade has yet to fall. Around you, priests arrange linen wrappings and funerary goods like decorators prepping a tragic diorama. You'd hoped exhaustion might grant mercy. It does not. A hush ripples through the hypostyle hall as the high priest steps forward, his voice a low vibration in the torpid air. The hour of judgment approaches, he intones. Let us consult the Book of the Dead to determine your fate in the duat. Of course there's paperwork. Cosmic bureaucracy waits for no one, not even a doomed sacrificial victim. Several acolytes unscroll a papyrus so long it trails out the temple door. Hieroglyphs dance across its surface, spells to navigate the underworld, incantations to ward off demons, and a terrifying terms and conditions clause promising eternal torment for non-compliance. Your mind reels. You survived lashings, scalding potions, and crocodile jaws. But now your destiny hinges on ancient fine print. The high priest unfurls the scroll with solemn flair, unfazed by its length. A scribe begins to read aloud, "O K of mortals, may you be guided by the feather of Ma'at, as your heart is weighed against the orb of truth." The orb of truth? You glance down at your own heart, thumping in your ears like the gates of doom swinging open. Nearby, a priestess lifts a golden scale. In one pan, she places a gleaming ostrich feather, the divine emblem of cosmic balance. In the other, she gestures at your still-beating chest. If your heart outweighs the feather, you're branded a sinner and devoured by Ammit, the crocodile-lion-hippopotamus mashup no one wants to meet. If it balances, you proceed to the field of reeds, basically eternal VIP afterlife real estate, but introduce even a hint of moral impurity, say a transcendent thought of "I deserve better than this," and your snack for an underworld beast. You steel yourself. After all you've been through, surely your heart is pure, right? You stole sandals in Memphis, once. You told a neighbor his goat had bad breath, twice. But compared to the pricking pain of Set's scourge, these moral slip-ups feel like parking fines. The priestess lowers the feather and your heart onto the scale. Time dilates. The feather wobbles. Your heart pulses once, twice. Then it settles. Balanced, miraculously balanced. A breath released and collective relief echoes through stencil-cut stone. "Praised be Ra," the high priest whispers. "You have passed Ma'at's trial. You'd pass a dunk tank test at a county fair with less risk to your nether regions. But cosmic justice smiles today. They release you from the altar straps and you slump onto a waiting pallet. The pain in your body throbs like a jealous ex. Yet the ritual continues, your mummification. They wheel in a low, creaking bier covered in embalming instruments, bronze hooks, alabaster jars, and all like scalpels. You catch your reflection in a polished metal mirror. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, hair caked with incense ash. If beauty truly is pain, you've never been more radiant. The embalmers strip you of your kilt and sandals, leaving you naked before a semicircle of onlookers. The crowd murmurs appreciation, as if watching an avant-garde performance piece titled Anatomy of Despair. First comes the removal of internal organs. A mollifying chant guides the process. Hail you who are pure, may your bowels nourish Osiris. A priest gently slides a bronze hook beneath your ribs and wrenches out your lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines in a single sloppy motion. They pack each organ into its own decorated canopic jar, labeling them with the heads of the 4 sons of Horus. Imagine a cursed Tetris game played in your entrails. One of the embalmers accidentally drops the jar containing your stomach. It shatters on the floor with a sickening crack. Your stomach acid trickles across the tile, sizzling like a curse. The embalmers clear the shard-laced liquid with a broom, mumbling apologies to both you and Osiris. You wonder if this little oops will appear in the EGP review of afterlife services. Next, they fill your torso with natron salt, turning you into a walking pickle kit. The salt dehydrates you over 40 days. Your body becomes a shriveled mockery of its former self. Every grain that seeps into your wounded flesh is a reminder that perfection demands sacrifice. And in this case, that sacrifice is literally you. They carve a small incision on your left side, pack the cavity with linotin and resin, then seal it with a waxy stopper shaped like Anubis's jackal head. This gruesome jigsaw sets you on the path to eternity, or at least until looters decide to crack your tomb like a cursed piñata. While you lie in your desert burial chamber, exposed to scorching sun and drifting sand, the priests continue decoration. They wrap you in dozens of layers of linen, each bandage coated in scented resin to keep your wrappings from unraveling and your flesh from decomposing. You can't help but think, if I survive this, I'll never complain about gift wrap again. As a final flourish, they paint a stylized visage on your linen mask, idealized eyes, a serene smile. It's the ancient equivalent of a wedding portrait, except you're on the wrong side of mortal existence. At last, they carry you into the burial chamber, concealed within a pyramidal structure, an architectural marvel that took years to build with slave labor, but only moments to fill with your terrified form. The walls glisten with hieroglyphs promising eternal life. Nearby, a pool of resin drips onto the floor, just in case any later tomb raider needs additional slipping hazards. They slide your lid shut with a resonant clang. The priest intones one final spell. May you journey beyond the western horizon, clad in robes of light. May the solar bark bear you through the starlit waters. May Osiris grant you fields of papyrus and eternal sunrise. In the half-light of the tomb, you hear the distant flap of temple doors closing. Your world reduces to the space inside your sarcophagus and the promise of an eternal afterlife, or eternal oblivion, depending on how one interprets the sibling rivalry between Isis and Nephthys. You feel the weight of the pyramid stones bearing down. You realize with bone-deep irony that freedom, once represented by your Rudies, has been replaced by perfect immobilization. Congratulations. You're now the still life centerpiece of a funerary exhibition. Hours blur into centuries. Sand seeps through cracks. Moisture petrifies your resin-coated wrappings. Occasionally, the earth trembles, perhaps an earthquake, perhaps distant construction of a new temple. Your linen mask, painted with perfect serenity, protects no one. Your organs rest in jars beside you, forming a creepy still life that future historians will reference with a mix of fascination and revulsion. Meanwhile, above ground, priests recycle your name in temple hymns, assuring worshippers you now intercede for Nile inundation and pharaoh prosperity. Statues depict you in flattened relief, offering libations to the gods as if you were an exemplar of piety. Tourists, 3 millennia later, snap selfies with your burial chamber walls, marveling at ancient craftsmanship while sipping frappuccinos. You lie there mute, caught between myth and meme, a sacrificial footnote in the grand narrative of civilization. If you survive the cleansing, the heart-weighing, the bestiary ordeal, and the mummification marathon, you still face the true final test, eternity. Would you spend infinite years bobbing on Ra's solar bark, watching the same sunrise-sunset cycle on loop? Would you fade into a whisper amid the vast duat, longing for one more taste of water free from resin? Or would you, in some rare display of hubris, barter your afterlife for a chance at a second mortal life, promising never to binge watch in the pyramids again. Of course, there's no do-over. Once the tomb seals, the last chisel stroke echoes into oblivion. Your consciousness drifts into the realm of Ka and Ba, the twin facets of Egyptian soul, wandering among lotus beds and reed-fringed waterways, perhaps forever. Meanwhile, the physical you remains locked in eternal stillness, a macabre museum piece for future generations to dissect, sometimes literally, when looters break in. And so, dear viewer, as the desert winds sweep over the pyramid's apex and the sun arcs beyond the western horizon, remember this. Surviving a sacrificial ritual in ancient Egypt isn't the end of suffering. It's merely the transition to an unending loop of ceremonial spectacle embalmed in dignity in cosmic paperwork. In the land of eternal life, mortality was prized and human lives were the fiercest currency. Stay tuned for part 4, where we'll explore the afterlife's bizarre social hierarchy, divine office politics among the gods, and why even eternity can feel like a bureaucratic nightmare worse than any sacrificial altar. Until then, may your heart remain featherlight, and your deadline slightly less eternal. You awaken in a rose-tinted dawn that never quite breaks, an endless horizon painted on tomb walls, the light filtered through narrow slits at the pyramid's apex. Your linen wraps are stiff as cardboard, the resin scent eternal. Above you, the sarcophagus lid rests in eternal vigil, yet here you are, conscious, somehow stuck between life's brutal pageant and the afterlife's tedious bureaucracy. A hush falls over the subterranean chamber as a procession of gleaming-eyed priests descends the ramp. They bear trays laden with miniature offerings, tiny loaves of consecrated bread, thimblefuls of Nile water, and jars of honey so precious it could buy a legionary's ransom. Each tray is an edible bribe intended to grease the cosmic wheels of your Ka and Ba, those twin fragments of soul now obligated to negotiate with deities whose notion of justice involves crocodile-lion-hippopotamus hybrids. The lead priest, resplendent in peacock feather plumes and gold leaf robes, steps forward and intones, "Behold the feast of the soul." He sets the trays on a low alabaster table carved with spells guaranteeing safe passage. You're expected to sample each morsel to demonstrate your compliance with divine dietary regulations, morsels that, if eaten carelessly, could condemn you to stomach cramps for all eternity. You lift a crumb of bread, it tastes like regret and broken promises. You sip water, it leaves a trace of natron grit on your tongue. You glimpse honey, it glistens like amber tears, and you realize this banquet is less a treat than a test, to prove your soul's submission to the god's whims. Once you've feasted, the next rite begins, the rite of names. A hieroglyphic scribe approaches with a fresh papyrus and an obsidian brush. He dips the tip into ink made from ancient charred reeds and gestures at your linen-wrapped chest. You must recite your name, your mother's name, your village's name, and the gods you worshipped in life, accurately and in proper order, lest your soul's paperwork be misfiled. Getting any detail wrong risks eternal misdirection in the duat, a bureaucratic purgatory worse than a bad afterlife drama. You clear your throat, an odd sensation when lungs are replaced with natron-dried sacs, and recite, "I am Marin-Hotep, son of Neferu, from the village of Per-Ankh. I honor Ra, Osiris, and Hathor." The scribe nods, scribbles furiously, then pauses. "You omitted your patron crocodile spirit," he declares, flipping through a massive ledger titled Registrum Deorum Minorum. Your mind races. Crocodile spirit? You only worshipped Ra, and your neighbor's goat had awful breath. Panic flutters like trapped katydids. The chamber's air grows thick with anticipation. The scribe flips back to a prior entry. Yes, Marin-Hotep, son of Neferu, patron spirit, Sobek Amen, born under the third pharaoh of the 5th dynasty. You blink twice, memory warping. Sobek Amen. Your only encounter with Sobek was as that spear-wielding herald who nearly turned you into papyrus confetti. But the ledger is clear. "Fine," you say, voice rasping. Sobek Amen. The scribe adds the name, stamps the ledger with a crocodile amulet, and pushes the papyrus forward. Signed and sealed. Your identity is now secure in this realm. For a price. He extends a tray of 10 gilded discs, obol-equivalent coins minted in lost forges. You realize, even in death, you must still pay the ferryman. With identity firmly logged, the priests usher you into the chamber of judgment, an antechamber illustrating every possible sin and its corresponding punishment. A wall relief depicts misers boiled in their own gold, liars submerged in venomous asp, and reckless drivers, chariot riders in this case, forever circling a fiery track. You swallow hard, recalling how you once borrowed your cousin's sandals without asking. Was that thrift or theft? Would your ghost be dunked in molten bronze as a refund? A door groans open and you step through. The Hall of Council awaits, a semicircle of ancestral spirits and minor gods seated on thrones of alabaster. Among them, your ancestors, great-great-uncle Horacer, who died of a snake bite, Aunt Marisunk, who perished in a flood, cousin Unas, mysteriously mummified alive. Each regards you with a stony gaze. Anubis, jackal-headed judge of the dead, sits at the center, scales on one side, a tally stick ledger on the other. You sense the verdict will be less about bravery and more about paperwork compliance. Anubis clears his throat, an absurd scratchy noise that echoes like gravel down a tunnel. Merenhotep, son of Neferu, patron Sobek Amen, he recites in perfect ritual cadence. He taps the tally stick. Your life has been evaluated across 37 categories: truthfulness, piety, hospitality, crocodile patronage, and personal budgeting. You blink. Budgeting? A hush descends. Anubis continues. Your offerings to the temple were insufficient by 2 jars of natron. Under Rule 4.12b, Clause V, this constitutes ritual insolvency. The ancestral spirits murmur. You slouch, heart sinking, a mortal crime of thriftiness. But before the gavel falls, a summons echoes, appeal granted by Hathor's grace. A goddess stepped forward, Hathor, cow-headed deity of joy and motherhood, whose domain inexplicably includes ex-sacrificials. She places a hand over your shoulder, her cow ear earrings tinkling like distant bells. He has suffered enough, she intones. Grant him custom afterlife lodging in the field of reeds, albeit without crocodile access privileges. Anubis nods, gavel strikes, and the chamber's tension dissipates in a collective exhalation. You're escorted into the field of reeds. Imagine Egypt's version of a celestial suburb, with canals for fishing, shade trees for napping, and eternity's finest falafel stands, though rumor says the falafel turns to sand at noon. Your new afterlife plot is modest: a single papyrus thicket, a companion ibis statue for company, and proximity to a vintner's pavilion. No crocodile rides allowed. Bummer. Your first afterlife task: claim your eternally appointed home. A scribe hands you deed scrolls that require 3 seals: Hathor's lotus, Osiris's Djed pillar, and Sobek Amen's scaled emblem. Each seal involves fetching a symbolic object from different divine estates: lotus buds from the Isle of Truth, papyrus reeds from the Nile's heart, and a crocodile scale from Sobek's grotto. Fetch quests in death. You groan, should have stayed alive to binge a TV show. You set out across the gleaming plains, guided by ibis-headed clerks who detail your pilgrimage with excessive small print. At the Isle of Truth, you navigate a maze of mirrored reeds and answer riddles of moral nuance. At the Nile's heart, you barge through coconut-shaped lilies to gather papyrus. At Sobek's grotto, you sneak past a slumbering river monster to pluck a shed scale, fingernails and all. Each victory feels hollow, punctuated by the reminder that even paradise demands hustle. With seals affixed, you return triumphant. The deed is executed, your afterlife estate is yours, subject to annual maintenance fees payable in golden lotus petals. You're shown to your afterlife plot, a cozy marshland cottage made of reed panels, with a thatched roof thick enough to withstand sandstorms. A friendly ibis butler named Kanumhan greets you and offers papyrus pancakes on a silver platter. You take a bite, delicious, except for the slight crunch of errant reed fiber. Days, and then centuries, drift by. You master afterlife carpentry, learn to fish for ghost carp, and debate with other ex-mortals whether the nightly sky is real stars or just reflection on the river's surface. On Tuesdays, you host communal story nights under the ghost moon. On Fridays, you trade celestial gossip, secrets about which pharaohs are due for tomb expansion and which gods are caught in interdivine politics. Recent rumor, Anubis and Thoth squared, off over record-keeping jurisdiction. Yet even in eternity's embrace, you sense the lingering sting of mortal pain. A memory surfaces, the crack of the sacrificial blade, the snap of crocodile jaws, the sting of resin. You realize that survival isn't the end of suffering. It's merely the next chapter of absurdity. Your afterlife is a bureaucratic miniseries with no commercial breaks, where the staff wander at will and deadlines extend into infinity. One twilight, if that word still holds meaning beyond time. You sit by your reed cottage, watching luminescent lotuses bloom. Hathor appears, radiant, and asks, "Do you find peace, Marinhotep?" You pause, considering the question. Peace? You survived ritual slaughter, cosmic judgment, and eternal paperwork. You've haggled with gods, bargained with afterlife accountants, and yet here you stand, lie, writing the never-ending log of your ghostly days. You reply, "I find that surviving was just the first trial. The second trial is living with what you endured, and the third is enduring what comes after." Hathor nods, cow ears flicking. Well said. You've attained the rare gift of reflective suffering. She bestows upon you a small reed crown, a token of her favor that wards off afterlife boredom. As she fades, you sense a ripple in the air, an incoming new content notification delivered by Anubis's underworld courier service. Perhaps a sequel, how to host a haunted pyramid party, or negotiating a raise with the ferryman. You sigh, a soul's eternal exasperation. And so, dear viewer, as you watch the sun-inferior rays dance on the desert sands beyond eternity's veil, remember this. Even if you somehow survived the most elaborate sacrificial ritual in ancient Egypt, the afterlife is no idyllic vacation. It's a never-ending episode of cosmic petty politics, bureaucratic quests, and undead coworker drama. Mortality might sting, but at least you got a few earthly sunsets and didn't have to sign up for a lifetime subscription to divine caprice. In the land of gods and pyramids, surviving sacrifice is only half the battle. The real challenge is thriving amid immortal insanity, where every reward carries a hidden clause, and every eternity requires its own insurance policy. Thanks for watching, and if you're tuning in from beyond the veil, drop a ghostly comment. Until next time, may your heart stay lighter than a feather, and your afterlife paperwork ever in order. Imagine stepping into a steaming wooden tub surrounded by naked strangers who scrub you with horsehair brushes, then discovering the luxury bathwater is recycled from last week. Welcome to Edo-Period Japan's public bathhouses, where cleanliness meets chaos, and only the bold survive the rinse cycle. You fold up your worn kimono, bow to the low-slung entrance gate, and step into the world of the Sento, a communal bathing hall that promises relaxation, but delivers an experience somewhere between fearless social experiment and aquatic obstacle course. Your feet squelch on mossy stones as you approach the chozubachi, water basin, to perform the customary hand wash. The wooden ladle trembles in your grip because you know what awaits: the great horsehair scrub and slough, the rank water rondo, and the silent standoff of shared towels. The grand entrance, sliding open the Norin, fabric curtain. You're hit by a wave of steam so thick it could fog a daimyo's crystal goblet. The bathhouse attendant, a stout man in a ragged happy coat, gestures at two doorways, left for men, right for women. You take a deep breath, step behind the left curtain, and immediately regret every life choice that led you here. The changing room is a wooden cubicle maze filled with jostling bodies. No lockers, no privacy. Your meager belongings are piled on a shelf with 10 other hapless souls' sandals, cloth loincloths, and half-eaten rice cakes. You eye your fellow bathers warily. An elderly fisherman with barnacle-cracked nails glares at you from his stool, polishing his scalp with a sea sponge. Nearby, a courtesan in a lacquered hairstyle delicately adjusts her obi before nonchalantly kicking off her wooden gita into the pile of sandals, sending one flying into your face. You catch it reflexively, nod politely, and slide it back onto the rack, hoping she doesn't notice your brute strength. Ritual of purification. Beside a chipped basin, a line of wooden stools waits like an assembly line of torture devices. You choose the stool next to a tattooed ronin, whose snake-patterned irizumi peeks over his shoulders. He's humming a drunken tune and seems unconcerned that his bare feet are inches from the communal foot-mopping cloth. You sit, fill a ladle with lukewarm water, and methodically pour it over your arms, forearms, elbows, underarms, each pour colder than the last because the bathhouse's hot water cauldron runs on rice straw and temperamental stoker moods. Then comes the scrub, a coarse horsehair brush attached to a short wooden handle. You lather your body with soap made from camellia oil and animal fat, which smells faintly of fish marinade. The Ronin takes the brush from you mid-lather, apparently a communal tool, and scrubs your back with the vigor of a sumo sparring match. You writhe like a startled carp, trying to maintain dignity while he hollers, "Less soap, more pressure." The rest of the stalls fall silent, a collective audience to your personal exfoliation horror show, the horsehair scrub and slow. Minutes later, if minutes can be formally measured by degrees of burning, you're polished squeaky clean. The brush passes to the next bather, a young woodcarver with splinters in his hands. He examines the brush warily, as if it might bite him back. He scrubs your chest in uneven strokes and mutters, "You'll pay for that fish soap aroma later, friend." You nod, mouth full of suds, and think, this is exactly why bathhouses should come with disclaimers. Rinsing off under a bamboo shower wand, you realize the water pressure is more of a suggestion than a steady flow. One moment you're drenched, the next you're scraping off soap with freezing river water pumped from the Tomei Canal. You gasp, both from the temperature shock and the realization that you haven't glimpsed your own reflection yet. Steam and splashes obscure every mirror. Into the tub of trepidation. Naked and dripping, you step over a low wooden barrier into the ofuro, the main communal soaking bath. It's a vast, waist-deep pool lined with cedar planks, the water dyed faintly amber from tannins in the wood. You lower yourself in, testing the warmth. It's scalding, the kind of heat that makes you question your circulatory system's loyalty. The Ronin sits at the far edge, legs crossed like a meditating hermit, occasionally sighing and sinking deeper. Around you, a dozen other bathers have claimed their spots. A group of laborers from the docks splash water at each other. Their loud guffaws echo off the tiled walls. An older samurai sits upright, stoic as a stone statue, occasionally dipping a single foot in the water to test its consistency. A troop of geisha floats by like painted swans, fans in hand to waft the steam away from their elaborate hairstyles. Despite the chaos, the atmosphere hums with a bizarre camaraderie. Strangers exchange okini, thanks, and nod in silent respect. Occasionally, you make eye contact with another foreigner, an itinerant scholar from Kyoto or a Kyoto-trained potter tired of polite society, and you share a mutual, understated look of what fresh madness is this. Survival. Tip. Number 1. Do not slip. The cedar planks lining the pool floor are slick with soap residue and algae. A single misstep can send you sprawling into, worse, someone else's personal space. You inch forward, gripping a handrail carved with stylized dragons. The laborers shout, "Oi, foreigner, watch your step." You nearly tumble, your butt grazing the Ronin's elbow. He doesn't blink. You apologize profusely, scrubbing your leg against the wet wood to demonstrate contrition. The rank water, rondo midway through your soak, the attendant appears with a long-handled wooden dipper, stirring the bathwater vigorously as if concocting a soup. "Time for the water refresh," he announces. You cringe, remembering the hook. This bath has recycled water cycles. Once an hour, the dirty water drains into a lower tank, then pumps back up after rudimentary filtration through bamboo mats. The tub empties with a mournful gurgle. The laborers cheer like pirates celebrating plunder. Fresh, hot water gushes in, carrying with it bits of skin flake, loose hair, and the occasional toenail clipping. You watch in horror as the bath's color darkens before your eyes, like a tea steeping too long. The Ronin dips a toe, shrugs, and resumes his meditative pose. You muster courage, lower yourself again, and find yourself floating amid debris. You cough, flick a hair off your shoulder, and decide that in Edo, trusting bathwater is a fool's errand. Survival. Tip number 2, mind your modesty. While you're busy avoiding slips and sludge, you notice the subtle threat of accidental exposure. Towels are small and communal. Each bather wraps a single tenugui, hand towel, around their waists or drapes it modestly across shoulders. There's an unspoken etiquette, no towel in the water. If yours slips off, you freeze in place, trying to retrieve it without offending your neighbor's sensibilities. You witness a poor fellow pluck his tenugui from the water with trembling fingers, tap it once on the tub's edge, and wrap it back around his hips, cheeks burning red enough to rival the heating stones. Waterborne traditions and taboo. Between splashes and stolen glances at scroll-painted wave patterns on the walls, you learn whispered secrets of Edo bathhouse culture. The proper way to perch your tenugui on your head between rinses. The correct moment to pour scented oil on the wooden ledge, if you're wealthy enough to afford it. The forbidden act of singing. Some claim hearing karaoke in a bath will summon vengeful water spirits. A group of fishermen hums a ballad in deep baritones. Two elderly women clamp hands over their ears and scuttle away in disapproval. Survival. Tip number 3. Embrace the awkward. By the time you emerge from the ofuro, you've lost count of the number of bodies you've brushed against, the number of stray hairs that kissed your sunburn, and the number of silent standoffs you survived without. Eye contact. You step out onto a wooden platform dripping icicles of suds and exchange a quick bow with the samurai, his only acknowledgement of you being alive in his presence. Cooling down, the final rinse. Before re-entering the changing room, it's customary to rinse off with cold water one last time. A ladleful of ice-cold canal water splashes over your shoulders, tightening your pores like miniature steel traps. The physical shock reminds you that yes, outside is still winter, and the bathhouse is a brief, steamy mirage. You shiver, wrap yourself in your damp tenugui, and retreat behind the norn. Exit strategy and aftershock. Back in the changing room, you wrestle into your kimono, now damp and clinging. Your hair is plastered to your scalp, a style no Tokyo courtesan would envy. The fisherman is gone. The potter from Kyoto has replaced him, busy retying his obi with surgical precision. You slip into your sandals, careful to avoid stepping on the woodcarver's still wet footprints, and bow deeply to the attendant, who offers a grunt that could pass for okini if you squint. You emerge into the chilly Edo air, beads of condensation rolling off your shoulders. The street lanterns glimmer, the rickshaw wheels creak, and Kyoto traders hawk roasted chestnuts on the corner. You realize that what you've just survived is both a trial by steam and a social contract. Naked vulnerability in exchange for a fleeting taste of warmth and communal reprieve. As you walk away, the memory of horsehair, brushes, recycled water, slippery floors, and silent etiquette wars churns in your mind like swirling bathwater. You vow to yourself, next time, you'll build a private wooden tub at home, if you can spare the lumber, the labor, and the lifetime supply of horsehair brushes. But deep down, you know you'll be back. Because in Edo-Period Japan, public bathhouses are less about hygiene and more about surviving the ultimate group therapy. Naked, scrubbed, and uncomfortably clean. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore the hidden politics of bathing hierarchies, the dark art of heat-stoking the cauldrons, and how to navigate the terrifying weekly bathhouse festival of towel thieves. You return to the bathhouse's antechamber, clutching your damp tanugi, bracing yourself for round 2 of communal chaos. Now that you've earned your baptism by horsehair, it's time to navigate the social minefield that is Edo's bathing hierarchy, and discover why subtle etiquette breaches can scar you more permanently than the sting of recycled bathwater. The hierarchy of hot water. As you slide open the norin again, you're greeted by an attendant holding 2 wooden paddles, one painted red, one painted white. He nods toward the steaming, curving corridor. Red paddle means high heat, white paddle means medium heat. There's a quiet murmur among seasoned bathers. Never ask for low heat. It's considered an insult to the spirit of the ofuro. You swallow, lift the red paddle, hoping fervently this isn't a literal death sentence by scalding cedar, and head for the inner sanctum. Inside, you find the smaller, hot room adjoining the main tub. It's a stone-lined chamber heated by a network of underground flues, the ambient temperature at least 10 degrees warmer than the communal bath. 3 men lounge like geishas after quinceañeras, their sweat forming stagnant pools at their feet. A sign in kanji reads, "For regulars only." Outsiders use at your own peril. Your pulse quickens. You're an outsider now, and a sweaty death trap awaits. Undeterred, you slip in between a bunny-eared woodcutter and a shivering poet. The heat hits you like a furnace blast. Your lungs protest, your vision flickers, and for a blissful moment, you wonder if this is how Icarus felt before he plunged. The woodcutter offers a small fan made of lotus petals. You accept gratefully, waving it like a man pleading for mercy. The poet recites a spontaneous haiku. Steam swirls and suffocates. Naked souls seek solace here, yet find only heat. You nod appreciatively and fan yourself into a near hallucinatory stupor. Minutes pass. Sweat streams off you in rivulets that could refill the bath itself. The poet sighs. Few survive 10 minutes in here on their first visit. You glance at the wall clock. Already 12 minutes have elapsed. You're both survivor and casualty of your own curiosity. The dark art of cauldron stoking. Escaping the hot room's maw, you wick away sweat as you pass the firebox door. Behind it, the stokers, typically 3 hulking laborers, tend to twin cauldrons filled with river water. Each cauldron is heated by separate rice straw furnaces. One keeps a roiling vortex for the main bath, the other maintains a simmering reserve for rinses. You peer through the grating to see the stokers shoveling straw, fanning embers with oversized fans and occasionally swiping their blood-slick palms across the furnace rails. It's a dance of flame and sweat reminiscent of a kabuki performance titled Hell's Kitchen. One stoker, a coal-black miner named Jinpachi, spots you gawking. He beckons you closer. "Ever stoke a furnace?" he rumbles. Before you can answer, he thrusts the tongs into your hands and shoves you toward the steaming maw. "Feed it straw," he grins. Feel the spirit of Edo's warmth. You choke on breath as you wedge straw between glowing embers. The heat sears your lungs. Your hands blister against the tongs, and a nearby stoker snickers. "First time?" You nod weakly, wondering if the romantic vision of an artisan's life includes endless furnace duty. After 20 agonizing minutes, the stokers call an intermission. You collapse on a stack of rice sacks, sweat pooling beneath you like a swamp. They present you with a wooden ladle of water, hot, yes, but filtered through cross-hatched bamboo mats. You sip it like a cauldron-brewed espresso, savoring the smoky tang and thanking some unnamed deity that it isn't river sludge. The politics of plush towels, revived, or at least no longer on the verge of fainting. You return to the changing cubicle, only to discover the dreaded towel tribunal in full session. A group of matrons in indigo kimonos stands around a bamboo rack stacked with folded towels. Each towel is embroidered with a crest indicating the patron's status. Merchant guilds, local theater troupes, daimyo entourages, even one from the shogun's personal household. Your simple tenyugui, plain, undyed cotton, elicits murmurs of disdain. One matron, a widow from the silk merchant district, holds your towel aloft. "This common cloth is unworthy," she declares. You bow, prepared to apologize, until she tucks it behind her obi. "You can borrow mine," she offers, "if you promise never to mention this exchange." You mouth a grateful okini, tuck the matron's finer towel around your waist, and exit stage left, towel polity temporarily mollified. Whispers of the Bathhouse Festival. As you make your modest escape, you overhear excited chatter about an upcoming event, the weekly Bathhouse Festival of Towel Thieves. Legend has it that once a week, the bathhouse hosts a mock trial for towel thieves, performing a pantomime trial by steam, complete with bamboo gavels, lantern-lit court, and public confessions. The victor, a lucky thief who swiped a towel without detection, receives free entrance the entire next month. The loser, caught in the act a second time, must purchase umbrellas for the entire staff. Your fingers tighten around your borrowed towel. You decide that while minor towel borrowing is forgiven, outright thievery merits both respect and fear. In Edo bathhouses, a towel is more than cloth. It's a symbol of trust, status, and social currency. The bathhouse bazaar beyond the bathing chambers lies an unexpected marketplace. The bathhouse bazaar. Vendors set up stalls along the corridor that links the men's and women's sections, taking advantage of captive audiences. You spy stalls selling scented oils, lavender imported from Nagasaki ports, handmade wooden combs carved with phoenix motifs, and novelty gourds shaped like Buddha heads, perfect for scooping water if you aspire to spiritual buoyancy. A merchant hawks Dragon's Breath soap, promising quadruple the lather for half the price of the house brand. You purchase a bar, partly for its outrageous claim, partly for the novelty of reading an English label that proclaims rich suds for noble pores. You tuck it into your loincloth pouch and continue, passing by another stall offering onsen stones. Heated in the main cauldron, hot pebbles you can place in your pockets for a personal micro sauna on the go. Survival. Tip number 4. Pack light, spend smart. You tally your dwindling coins, enough for one more round of Dragon's Breath soap, 3 rice balls from the street vendor downstairs, and possibly the very last premium tenugui sold here. An embroidered souvenir that ensures towel tribunal immunity next visit. You congratulate yourself on wise spending and vow never to enter a bathhouse unprepared again. The final tea ceremony. Your departure isn't complete without one final ritual, the bathhouse tea ceremony. A quiet alcove off the main lobby houses a low wooden table and cushioned mats, reserved for bathers to sip grilled barley tea and replenish electrolytes. A stern elderly attendant, perhaps the bathhouse's founder, polishes a cast-iron kettle with the devotion of a Shinto priest. He ladles steaming tea into ceramic cups stamped with the bathhouse's crest, slides one across to you, and bows deeply. You wrap both hands around the cup's warmth and take a slow sip. The roasted barley aroma settles in your sinuses. The tea's mild bitterness dances on your tongue. Around you, bathers, freshened, clothed, and slightly reclined, raise their cups in silent camaraderie. For a fleeting moment, the crazy horsehair scrubs, the inferno heat, the towel politics, and the bazaar's brisk commerce fade into the steamy air. You're part of something bigger, a centuries-old ritual of vulnerability, social theater, and shared delight in simple warmth. Epilogue to Part 2. You step out into the crisp Edo evening, tenugui now your own, soap in hand, and barley tea's afterglow in your veins. The bathhouse lights glow behind you, a portal that transforms strangers into sudsy compatriots, hierarchies into temporary equalizers, and cold nights into warm memories. Yet you cannot shake the knowledge that next time, you'll face the hot room again, wage silent war over towels, and possibly be summoned for towel thief trial by steam. But you'll return nonetheless, drawn by the promise of communal warmth and the thrill of surviving another round in the absurd, steamy arena of Edo-Period public bathhouses. Ichu, stay tuned for Part 3, where we'll dive into the hidden rituals of bathhouse neighborhoods, the secret alliances between courtesans and stokers, and the annual frozen tub festival that almost no one survives. You return to the bathhouse as dawn's pink light slips through the Norn, steeling yourself for deeper dives into Edo's steamy underworld. Having survived the horsehair tribulations and the towel tribunals, you're now charged with uncovering the bathhouse's hidden networks. The clandestine power plays between courtesans and stokers, the neighborhood's whispered rituals of cleansing, loyalty, and the spine-chilling frozen tub festival that every veteran fears yet secretly craves. The neighborhood web slip through the wooden corridor linking the men's and women's wings, and you'll notice tiny alcoves brimming with sake barrels, baskets of fresh herbs, and bundles of laundry. These aren't random supplies, they're the infrastructure of neighborhood alliances. Bathhouses in Edo aren't standalone businesses, they're community hubs. Each stall in the bazaar, each flicker of lantern light, each scrap of wood used for cauldron kindling ties into an intricate tapestry of social obligations stretching from fishmongers to aristocrats. The clan of kombu and kappa. At the corridor's midpoint, you glimpse a discreet stack of kombu kelp tied with red twine. That's the mark of the kombu clan, local fishermen who trade their prized seaweed in exchange for free nightly soaks. They shuffle in after the market closes, bundles of slimy kelp slung over broad shoulders. In return, they smuggle fresh river water into the bathhouse's reserve tank, diluting the bamboo mat runoff so the water stays relatively clear. Without them, the bath's amber glow would deepen into a murky brown-green slop. Opposite them lurk the Kappa Guild, shadowy night stokers with skin as pocked as a dried gourd and voices like creaking beams. The Kappa are the secret masters of fire control, sneaking extra embers into the boilers after hours to ensure the next day's heat stays blistering. They move like ghosts through the firebox catwalks, fanning smoldering rice straw coals with bent fans salvaged from abandoned yukata. Their loyalties shift at the flick of a coin, but they recognize true bravery, the courage to wed your life to the whim of a roaring furnace. These two clans maintain a tense detente. The kombu supply water, the kappa supply heat. If the fishermen short the bathhouse's water haul, the kappa retaliate by leaving embers too cold to heat the boilers, transforming the communal tub into a lukewarm insult. Likewise, if the kappa overheat the boilers and scald patrons, the fishermen threaten to withhold their seaweed, turning the water tannin black and foul-smelling. Bathhouse managers navigate these alliances with careful diplomacy, offering honorary tenugui to fishermen, surplus sack to the kappa, and maintaining enough neutrality to prevent open feuds. Courtesans and stokers, a steam-forged romance. While the kombu and kappa trade power, another alliance blooms beneath the bathhouse's rising steam. The secret camaraderie between courtesans and stokers. At first glance, their worlds couldn't be more different. One an opulent realm of lacquered nails and perfumed silk, the other a soot-smeared domain of furnace ash and coal-black brows. Yet, in Edo's bathhouses, these two classes share the same elemental obsession. Heat. Midnight trysts by the firebox. Long after the last bather drifts home, the firebox corridor morphs into a clandestine meeting ground. Courtesan, those lacquered lilies of the pleasure quarters, slip through the back door in low-heeled geta, disguised as laundry attendants. They carry tiny mirror boxes and comb sets, their silk robes hidden beneath soot-streaked jackets borrowed from stokers. Meanwhile, stokers emerge from the furnace vents, coal-scuffed and ravenous for gossip and ginjo sake. By the boilers, they gather around barrels of heated amazake. The courtesans trade sybaritic tales, rumors of a rival competitor's clandestine opium den, and news of a poisoned lacquer shipment, while the stokers divulge the day's thermal secrets, which cauldron's temperature will peak by dawn, which flue requires extra straw to ward off smoke backdrafts. The courtesans slip out delicate combs and apply bright red Benebana rouge, enchanting the stokers with their painted smiles. In turn, the stokers show off calloused hands that know the furnace's every throb, recalling the moment when they first mastered the tongs and felt invincible. This unorthodox romance thrives on mutual respect. Courtesans appreciate the stoker's mastery of fire, essential to the ritual of bathing, while stokers covet the courtesan's elegance and secrets. It's rumored that a well-placed whisper from a favored courtesan can secure a stoker's loyalty in perpetuity, effectively powering the bathhouse's heat supply with scented breath. Managers discover handsome benefits, a stable workforce, discreet messages delivered via lantern-lit steam, and a cultural cachet that draws patrons from distant provinces seeking scandal alongside serenity. The ritual of loyalty, sacred bath, tokens. Walk through the changing room after a night visit and you'll notice small wooden plaques, ofuda, nailed above certain cubicles. These are sacred bath tokens, votive offerings from patrons who've donated lavishly to the bathhouse. Each token bears the donor's name and a stylized depiction of steam curling from a tub. Attaching your token grants you seasonal privileges, priority entry during busy winter weeks, a personal heated bench in the hot room, and exemption from water-refresh ceremonies during peak hours. The bathhouse itself becomes a living shrine of loyalty. Patrons vie for slot-based donations, leading to fierce and occasionally absurd auctions. One wealthy cotton merchant allegedly donated 20 barrels of rice straw just to secure the coveted right of first dunk during New Year's Eve soaks. His plaque, polished daily, gleams above a cubicle reserved for his family's exclusive use. Meanwhile, local school teachers pool coins to erect a communal plaque promising clean hearts and clean bodies in exchange for whispered prayers that their next term's examinations will pass without cheating scandals. These tokens aren't mere status symbols, they're sacred relics believed to keep the bathhouse's spirit alive. Wash away the tokens with disuse and the bathhouse's heat will falter, the kombu water supply will sour, and the kappa will revolt, leaving the boilers cold and the tub contaminated. Hence, each afternoon, a designated attendant sprinkles a mixture of crushed sakura petals and sake leaves over the plaques, recharging their protective aura. The Frozen Tub Festival, a dance with hypothermia. As winter's chill blankets Edo, the bathhouse transforms into a stage for its most extreme ceremony, the Frozen Tub Festival. Once a year, on the coldest full moon of the lunar calendar, bathhouses across the city open their doors into a select few brave enough to endure alternating cycles of boiling baths and ice-cold dips. It's said that only true bathhouse disciples participate. The uninitiated might lose fingertips, or worse, drift into the tub's depths, frozen stiff. Preparation and prophecy. Weeks before the festival, cryptic notices appear. Wooden signboards nailed to gateposts reading, "By steam we live, by ice we rise, February 20th, 9th hour. Curious onlookers whisper about the head stoker consulting the kappa, Guild for sacred ice blocks carved from the frozen Arakawa River, each block said to be imbued with the river's ancestral spirit. Courtesans crowd around the notice board, planning aristocratic attendance in fur-trimmed robes, while fishermen eye the river ice, wondering if they've unwittingly given away too much kombu for a simple ceremony. Those daring enough to secure a festival ticket submit a tiny ofura along with a ceremonial brush and bowl, signaling their willingness to face frostbite for spiritual rebirth. The bathhouse managers tally the offerings, then carve runic symbols into the bath floor. Ancient carvings unearthed during last year's refurbishing, intended to channel the duo forces of fire and ice. The ceremony unfolds. On festival night, the main tub stands empty, its cedar planks naked beneath the pale moonlight. In the center, a vast ice block, nearly a ken wide, floats in a trough of briny river water. Patrons gather, wrapped in canvas wraps and fresh tenugoi, toes curled, breath steaming like dragons. The lead stoker chants invocations to both Kappa and the Frost Kami, waving sprigs of pine and incense around the ice block. The courtesans, in ceremonial robes, fan the tub's edges to maintain the mystic atmosphere. At the appointed signal, a single drum beat, the tub's sluice gates open. Rushing water floods the trough, swirling shards of ice toward the cedar planks. Without hesitation, the assembled souls clamber into the tub, plunging into water just above freezing as ice flakes swirl around them like ghostly minnows. Screams of frigid ecstasy echo off the tiled walls as bodies convulse in shock. Moments later, the drum calls again. Patrons scramble onto warming benches trimmed with heated stones. They huddle under kappa-forged blankets woven from straw and silk, passing small bowls of amazak to thaw numb fingers. A hush falls, a brief respite before the next plunge. This dance of extremes repeats 3 times, heating with roaring boilers, soaking in near-boiling cedar baths, then dashing back into the icy midwinter water. Each cycle tests resolve, endurance, and one's very grip on sanity. Veteran participants chant, Atsu, Tsurai, Samui, Kataki, hot, painful, rebirth, as they rotate through the rite. Survivors and their spoils. Few emerge unscathed. Some lose toenails to ice, others suffer brutal steam blisters. Yet those who endure declare the experience transcendent, the triumph over elemental fury, the unity forged among flesh and bone, the communion of steam and frost. Survivors receive a special hand-carved ofuda inscribed with both fire and ice seals, a talisman believed to grant immunity from the coldest winters and the iciest hearts. The bathhouse's stock of special tofu wraps and thick tokoroten jelly is reserved for these champions, their victory feast to replenish strength. Courtesans hand out silk pouches of earthen salt infused with pine resin to ward off future chills. The Kappa Guild reclaims its honor, earning tribute in rice straw bundles, and the kombu fishermen bask in reflected glory, their kelp garnishes used in celebratory soups. Epilogue to Part 3. As the moon wanes and the festival's embers cool, the bathhouse returns to its everyday madness. Horsehair scrubs, recycled water, towel politics, and frenzied bazaars. Yet, beneath it all, the hidden networks you've uncovered persist. Community clans negotiating water and heat, courtesans weaving alliances with stokers, patrons safeguarding their loyalty tokens, and the memories of frostbitten bravehearts etched into cedar and ice. When you emerge into dawn's crisp air after completing these 3 rites, scrub, stoke, and festival, you feel both defeated and invigorated. The platform beneath your sandals feels solid once more. The steam rising from your skin carries new secrets. You realize that surviving Edo's public bathhouses isn't merely about endurance of cold, heat, and awkward nudity. It's about navigating a living tapestry of alliances, rituals, and absurd traditions that bind the community together in steam-soaked unity. Dust off the pine resin from your tenugue, pocket your kombu clan voucher, and ready your heart for the final voyage. Part 4, where we'll plunge into the bathhouse's ultimate rite of passage, the waterfall of reflection, the hierarchy of hidden pools, and the legendary last bath ceremony that promises enlightenment or eternal regret. Until then, stay steamy, dear viewer, and keep your towels close. You've scrubbed, soaked, froze, and stoked. You've navigated horsehair tortures, towel tribunals, secret alliances, and near-lethal feats of elemental endurance. Now comes the bathhouse's ultimate gauntlet, the waterfall of reflection, the hierarchy of hidden pools, and the fabled last bath ceremony. Brace yourself, dear viewer. This finale will separate true bathhouse disciples from mere sud-soaking dilettantes. The waterfall of reflection. After the Frozen Tub Festival, most patrons stagger out to huddle under heated stone benches, clutching bowls of amazak like lifelines. But a remnant of hardened veterans remains behind, whispering about the waterfall of reflection, a vertiginous cascade concealed behind the bathhouse's northern wall. Discovery and descent. To find it, you must traverse a narrow service corridor, where dripping bamboo pipes hum incessantly in faded calligraphy warns. Only those who have earned the right may proceed. At the corridor's end stands a sliding wooden door, marked by a single brushstroke of the kanji mirror. Push it open, and you're greeted by darkness, save for a sliver of moonlight dancing on wet stone steps spiraling down. Your footfalls splash echoes as you descend into a hidden chamber, carved directly into the bedrock. Torches mounted on iron sconces flicker, revealing a gnarled rock face where water tumbles from an overhead slit. The waterfall itself is narrow, barely 2 feet wide, but the flow is relentless, its roar matching the pounding of your heart. A weathered sign cautions, bathe beneath this torrent and confront your true self, your regrets, your vanities, your hidden shame. Only when you shrink beneath the endless rush can you emerge free of pretense. You step onto a slick stone ledge and feel the waterfall's spray hit your back like 1,000 tiny needles. Naked in the dark, you shuffle forward until you stand directly beneath the cascade. In the dim torchlight, you catch sight of your reflection in a shallow pool at your feet, a distorted, watery image that stares back with hollow eyes and trembling shoulders. The torrent's trial. Under the waterfall, you're forced to lean into the stream, pressing your chest against the rock wall and letting the water pound you. The colder temperature, fed by an underground spring, cuts through any lingering warmth, sending jolts of chemical clarity through your veins. As the water hammers your shoulders, you're meant to whisper aloud the bathhouse's 4 sins. Vanity, admiring your reflection. Complacency, trusting the recycled water without caution. Ambiguity, neglecting to learn the unspoken rules. And hubris, believing you've conquered the bathhouse's rights. Your voice comes out staccato, swallowed by the torrent, but the ritual demands it. As you confess each vice, the waterfall's roar seems to ebb slightly, as if absorbing your whispered contrition. By the time you utter hubris, your limbs tremble, your teeth chatter, and tears blur your vision. Then, without warning, the torrent stops. You're left drenched and shivering, enveloped in deathly silence. A single torch dims, then reignites, bathing the chamber in a softer glow. You step away from the pool of confessions and glimpse the rock wall. 4 kanji, aoman, daiman, aimei, shurong, etched above your head, as though the waterfall itself has branded you with your sins. Yet, beneath those carved characters, another kanji flickers into view, Jinghua, purification. The chamber's air warms, the torches brighten, and a wave of calm washes over your chilled spine. The waterfall of reflection has laid bare your flaws and granted you absolution. You ascend the stone steps, each footfall lighter than the last, emerging back into the bathhouse's main hall with renewed humility. The hierarchy of hidden pools. Restoration comes swiftly in the bathhouse's final domain. The labyrinth of hidden pools, a network of temperature-graded alcoves tucked behind lacquered sliding doors. These secluded chambers offer baths ranging from tepid to inferno, accessible only to those who can decode the subtle signage etched in katakana and hiragana. Reading the signs, the doors bear poetic names rather than numbers. Moonlit tranquility, dragon's exhale, phoenix's nest, ember's respite, ocean's whispers, and sun's embrace. Novices are advised to begin with moonlit tranquility, a bowl-warm pool designed for gentle easing. Veterans dare to conquer sun's embrace, a searing chamber whose water hovers near boiling. You, a freshly purified candidate, approach the corridor under the watchful gaze of the attendant. Even he refrains from offering guidance. You must trust your intuition and your earlier trials. You slide open Dragon's Exhale and find a deep, viridescent pool whose water is warm with a faint sulfuric tang. A stone bench sits at poolside, draped with a folded tenugui. You pause. Begin here or push onward. Deciding to rise to the challenge, you slip into Phoenix's nest next. Its water glows orange in the amber lantern light, the temperature enough to make your breath hiss. You gasp as your skin reddens, yet you remain submerged, eyes closed, imagining yourself reborn from the scorching flames, just as a phoenix arises from ashes. Having endured all but the extremes, you boldly push the sliding door to sun's embrace. The very air beyond is hot enough to wilt paper. The pool's surface shimmers like molten metal. A single wrong step could feel like skin searing off bone. You press your toes against the ledge, brace yourself, and carefully lower your body into the blistering water. Pain erupts, your muscles contract, and your lungs gobble air. Yet you do not rise. For a full 3 minutes, the maximum recommended duration. You stand waist-deep, sweating tears into the mire of your own endurance. When you finally emerge, each pore on your body seems polished, every nerve singed into acute awareness, earning your place. Survival here is not merely a matter of withstanding heat, it's a matter of respecting the hierarchy. Patrons who linger too long in sun's embrace, without completing the gentler alcoves, are subject to distrust, and at worst, ejection by the attendant's wooden paddle. You've navigated the full spectrum: confession under cold falls, humility in moderate warmth, rebirth in heat, and ascension over fire. You claim your spot in the Bathhouses' invisible honor roll, a status recognized by a subtle nod from the attendant and a discreet etching of your name on a hidden ledger behind the reception screen. The last bath ceremony. Having completed every trial, steam scrub, hot room, waterfall, festival, reflection, and hidden pools, you stand at the cusp of the last bath, a private candlelit rite preserving only for those who have truly mastered the shul. Bathhouses arcana. Unlike every prior stage, this ceremony requires no communal witnesses. It is a solitudinous passage between the realms of flesh and legend, preparation of the sacred space. In a private antechamber behind the manager's office, the attendant greets you by your honor roll name. No longer foreigner, no longer visitor, but Sento-sama. The room is furnished with a single stone tub, the size of a small coffin, carved from black basalt. Steam rises from its inky depths, illuminated by clusters of beeswax candles whose wicks flicker like eastern stars. Fragrant smoke curls from a bronze censer of sandalwood and hinoki bark, suffusing the air with wood smoke sweetness. Placed on a lacquered tray beside the tub are 3 items: a polished obsidian mirror, a sprig of fresh bamboo leaves, and a small hand-blown glass vial of aromatic bath oil, an exclusive blend of camellia, yuzu, and aoud, reserved only for this ceremony. Each object symbolizes an element of the bathhouse's soul: reflection, mirror; resilience, bamboo; and revelation, oil. The ritual: steps, mirror, invocation. You stand before the obsidian mirror, water droplets clinging to your limbs. You gaze into your own eyes, no longer a distorted apparition, but a figure forged through sundered comfort and searing trials. Whispering the phrase, Kata Kizu Ukeru, I bear the scars, I embrace the wounds, you trace the mirror's rim with your wet fingers. The mirror reflects back not your mere visage, but the sum of your ordeals. Every waterfall bruise, every ember-scalded channel, every frigid shock. Bamboo benediction. Next, you pluck the bamboo leaves and dip them into the tub's water, stirring the surface in slow circles. The bright green fronds release a fleeting aroma of summer rain. As the water distills their essence, you recite Chikara Arumizu o Fukai Heiwa o, water of strength, peace profound. You lean forward, inhale the steam, and feel a calm resolve settle into your sinews. Oil anointment. Finally, you uncork the glass vial and pour 2 drops of oil onto the water. Iridescent swirls form on the surface, reflecting the candle flames. You whisper, Mi o Hiraka, Kokoro Hiraka, open the eyes, open the heart, and sink into the tub. The oil clings to your skin, each droplet dissolving into warmth. Muscles unclench, tension dissolves, and a luminous clarity radiates through every pore. The emergence. After exactly 7 minutes, no less, no more, you rise from the sacred waters. Your skin glows, your breaths come easy, and your mind stands at the precipice of revelation. The attendant places a soft cotton robe around your shoulders and offers a cup of chilled plum wine infused with dried chrysanthemums. You sip slowly, tasting rain-sweet petals and orchard sunlight. In this moment, you aren't simply a mortal who survived an absurd trial. You are the bathhouse incarnate, steam, stone, flame, and water, it unified in human form. The attendant bows and removes his mask of anonymity. He reveals himself as the bathhouse's founder, a legend whispered to have mastered every rite since childhood. He proffers a bronze token engraved with the bathhouse's crest and your honor roll name. May this remind you, he intones, that the pursuit of clarity demands vulnerability, and the price of warmth demands surrender. Epilogue. Beyond the final steam, you step from the privy sanctuary into the dawning world. The streets of Edo stir, rickshaws squeak awake, vendors haul braziers of roasted sweet potatoes, incense smoke drifts from temple gates. You clutch the bronze token in your palm, its cool weight grounding you in triumph. You've survived absurd exposures, scrub brushes, frozen deluges, volcanic baths, and secret conspiracies. You've cleansed mind, body, and spirit, and glimpsed the bathhouse's hidden soul. As you walk away, you notice other bathhouse veterans nodding in your direction, recognizing your token's glint beneath your saya-style robe. They share silent respect, knowing you've earned the unspoken bond of true survivors. Your heart hums with a newfound harmony between steam and cold, reflection and reckoning, chaos and calm. And so, dear viewer, as you close this final chapter on Edo-Period public bathhouses, remember, it wasn't just about surviving temps and tricks. It was about shedding pretenses, confronting your own missteps, forging alliances in unlikely places, and embracing both the searing fires and the freezing falls that shape who we become. May your future baths be warm, your towels never stolen, and your soul always open to the next cascade of truth, whether under a waterfall of confession or in the quiet hush after the last bath. Imagine trudging before dawn to a frozen riverbank, armed with nothing but a sharpened stick and a tattered leather thong, only to discover the fish you need to survive have fangs, scales like armor, and zero interest in voluntarily impaling themselves on your primitive spear. Welcome to a day in the life of a Stone Age fisherman, where hypothermia is your baseline, starvation your constant companion, and the only thing more absurd than your tools is the hope that you'll return to camp alive. You rub frost from your eyelashes as you stumble awake in your windswept lean-to, a crude structure of branches and animal hides that smells faintly of damp moss and yesterday's regrets. The camp's embers have long gone cold, and the sky above is a bruised gradient of gray. Your torso aches where the bone awl you fashioned for sewing tore at your ribs last night, but there's no time for pity. Today, you hunt water. Your heart thumps against your chest like a cave drum as you tighten the sinew bindings on your belt, checking that your flint-tipped harpoon is still intact. This hunk of sharpened rock lashed to a driftwood shaft represents your count 'em, one, chance to puncture a slippery, muscular fish before the sun crests the horizon. If it fails, your midday meal will consist of edible lichen and perhaps a handful of bark-gnawed roots. Delightful, you set off across the frost-hazed plains, each step sinking up to your ankles in half-frozen mud. Your breath billows in front of you, mingling with the low groans of the wind threading through skeletal trees. Hours of darkness remain, but your ancient ancestors taught you that the best time to fish is when the cold pushes aquatic prey towards slower metabolism, and thus slightly less wrathful thrashing when you pierce their sides. At the river's edge, you pause. The water churns like quicksilver beneath a veil of rising fog. Tiny ice shards drift downstream, reminders that this morning's splash could be your last warm taste of the day. You crouch on a slippery rock, unpack your makeshift bait, a wriggling grub you scavenge from decaying logs, and tie it onto a sinew loop at the harpoon's tip. Already your fingers pinch freeze, the sinew stiff with frost. Survival demands dexterity. Your numb digits grumble in rebellion. You launch your harpoon with a grunt, sending it whistling through the frigid air. It arcs, glints, and splashes into the swirling current. You clutch the trailing line, anticipation and dread locked in uneasy balance. Seconds stretch like taffy, a tug, light but insistent. You yank back, heart soaring. The line tightens, a fish fights. Your arms drop into bone-biting chill as you wrestle this living missile toward shore. The struggle is primal. Your spear digs into the riverbed. Your hands tremble. The fish's muscular body thrashes, sending waves of icy spray across your face. One jagged scale slices your palm. You curse in a language older than memory and grip harder. The line frays. You jerk again. It snaps, and the fish rockets free, leaving you soaked, bleeding, and staring at nothing but ripples. You howl into the void. Well, that was educational. Minutes later, after you've considered smashing your harpoon into the river in self-loathing, you retrieve it from the churning water. The bait is gone, the tip dulled, and your hopes dashed. You're left clutching a soggy reed, troubleshooting how to fashion another lure with the materials at hand. Hunger pangs twist your gut like the river's current. Noon approaches and you've landed absolutely nothing. Undeterred, because giving up isn't in the Paleolithic job description, you trudge upstream in search of calmer pools. Each step sends errant snowflakes cascading from overhanging branches. You pass the skeleton of an elk, antlers splayed like a crown, its bleached bones bleeding silent omens. Nature's grocery store is full of predators, wolves that pad the forest floor in ghost-quiet pursuit, ravens that caw hungry commentary from high branches, and insects so numerous that you'll trade any catch for a few peaceful breaths. By midday, you locate a shallower eddy where water warms marginally under the sun's feeble rays. You unpack a smoother branch, sharpen it with your flint scraper, and carve serrations into its tip, an experimental barbed spear. The process leaves your thumbs raw and bleeding. You suck on the wounds for moisture, taste metallic regret, and press onward. At the eddy, you brace against the bank and thrust your barbed spear into the water. At first, nothing happens. Then a ripple. The fin of a wary trout glints beneath the surface. You hold your breath, lower the spear slowly. The fish darts, then circles back toward your bait laced between the barbs. It nibbles, trying to decide if this stick is edible. You tense your entire body, muscles coiled like springs. Suddenly, the fish clamps onto your barbs and bolts. You yank with brute force. The river roils. Your spear jerks sideways, and you taste blood in your mouth as you bump your head on an overhanging rock. You groan, vision spinning, but manage to haul the trout onto shore. It's small, about the length of your hand, but it's a meal. You raise a shaky fist in triumph, shouting as though the entire valley can hear you. You are hunter. You are fisher. You are exhausted. You gut the fish with your flint blade, marveling at how quickly the river's blood sinks into the stones. You roast it over embers coaxed from damp twigs, an aromatic ritual that warms your chest. The taste, smoky, oily, alive. For a moment, suffering feels worthwhile, but survival isn't solely about a single meal. As you dine, you inspect your wounds, the palm gash, the scrapes on your shins, the bruise blooming on your forehead where rock met bone. You measure time in bruises and hunger pangs, knowing the river's bounty is finite, danger infinite. Your fire sputters as darkness encroaches. You wrap your soggy cloak tighter and survey the river in fading light. No more fish rise, no more bites dare to tug your line. Tomorrow will demand the same brutality, remaking tools, picking fresh bait, skirting predators, and bargaining each breath with the cold. You swallow the last morsel of fish and face the icy wind. Your teeth chatter an apology to the world. For a single day, you are a Stone Age fisherman. Foolhardy pioneer, flint-wielding dreamer, water-blasted fool. As you trudge back to camp, empty-stomached and bruised, you realize the truth. Survival wasn't a question of technique or tools, but the stubborn illusion that you could outwit rivers older than your imagination. And that, dear viewer, is exactly why you wouldn't survive a day as a Stone Age fisherman, because in the ancient wild, logic is a luxury, safety a myth, and hope itself a fragile bait that often snaps before it even meets the water. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive deeper into the freak blizzards, the deadly hip-deep marshes, and the terrifying river beasts that make a single day of fishing feel like an eternity in the jaws of nature's absurd cruelty. Daylight hunches, low in the sky when you rouse yourself from your lean-to, limbs protesting like creaky oars against the tide. Last night's victory, a grain of sand trout roasted over wet twigs, was sweet, but hardly sufficient fuel for the gauntlet ahead. Today, you'll trade the skinny currents for stillwater marshes, where mosquitoes dine like tyrants, and the mud holds you hostage. Welcome back to the Stone Age Fisherman survival saga, where every step is a bet against your own mortality. Dawn's false promise. You break camp at first light, boots caked in yesterday's river silt. The brisk air carries the distant chorus of marsh birds, screeching herons, chirping bitterns, and unseen wings flapping like tattered sails. You follow animal trails into the wetlands, relying on footprints, elk, deer, the occasional saber-toothed cat, to guide you toward deeper water. Navigation by instinct is a dubious science, but your crude map, etched on a birch bark scrap, points to Big Bog, an eddy rumored to teem with pike and eel. Within minutes, every footstep sinks past your ankle, then mid-shin, then thigh. The mud clings like wet fur, tugging at your legs. You nearly topple face first into the muck and catch yourself on a half-rotted branch that snaps under your weight. You spill forward, belly first into the marsh, sending frogs leaping in terror. You scramble up, panting, your leather thong unraveled, your dignity lost in a puddle of green water. You wring handfuls of smelly sludge from your hair, noting that the bog's stench rivals any cave of rotting carcasses. Mosquitoes begin their assault, a buzzing plague gnawing at your neck and ears. You slap at your arms, fumble for your makeshift insect repellent, a smear of animal fat mixed with crushed bitter roots, and apply it in patchy strokes. The relief is partial. You still feel itchy stabs where the mosquitoes ignore the repellent's feeble defense. The marsh trap. You push deeper into the marsh, searching for that telltale shimmer of fish beneath the glassy surface. Instead, you find yourself waist-deep in the water's ooze, the mud below giving way to unseen suckers. Panic knots your gut as you realize your feet have vanished into a living trap. You struggle to pull a leg free. The mud grips tighter, pulling you toward a cold embrace. Heart pounding, you remember your tribal ancestors' advice. When the earth entombs you, create space around your body by rolling. You lie back and begin a slow corkscrew roll, scooping mud away as you twist. Each rotation inches your leg free, until, with a final heave, you pop out like a gopher from its hole. You collapse on the bank, coughing swamp air, tasting algae in your lungs. Survival tip: never underestimate the marsh's appetite for the unwary. Pike, eels, and other water demons. Shaking off the sludge, you gather your wits and your barbed spear from where it lay half buried. The bog's water is dark, pregnant with hidden predators. You recall that pike lurk beneath lily pads, jaws wide as wagon wheels, while eels twist like serpents of shadow. Armed with your sharpened stick, you creep along the bank, eyes peeled for ripples, a flash of silver. Pike. You drop to one knee, heart surging, and brace the spear. The fish darts. You lunge. Your spear plunges into murky water, only to meet rubbery resistance. You reel back, wrestling a thrashing pike that wraps your arm in a crushing embrace. You grunt and struggle, the spear's barbs digging into the fish's bulk. It tail whips water into your face, stinging your eyes with grit. At last you heave the pike onto the bank, a hefty prize almost knee-high, scales gleaming like armor. You gasp in triumph, but your victory is short-lived. The pike's flapping body smashes your flint blade from your belt, sending it skittering into the muck. You wade back into the water to retrieve it, nearly stepping on an eel nest. One electric snake lunges at your foot, sending a jolt through your leg that feels like the underworld's handshake. You leap back, screeching, narrowly avoiding a bite that would have spelled doom. You tug your flint blade free of the mud and finish the pike, but not before losing half your precious water bait to the eel's hissing wrath. 2 fish down, 2 tools nearly lost, and you're out of your meager stash of flint. Tool trials and fire fumbles. You wrest your boots off, wring out the mud-soaked leather, and sit by a sputtering campfire that refuses to ignite. Your flint spark weakens on damp kindling. Each effort to coax flame feels like pleading with a stone god. Finally, a stroke of luck, a shard of dried pine resin, and the kindling flares. You cradle the tiny fire as it grows, but remain painfully aware that one wrong move could doom your dinner plans. You gut and fillet the pike, stacking the fillets on hot rocks to dry, while you fashion a crude net from woven grass, stems, and sinew. Hours pass as you braid and knot, fingers bleeding, eyes squinting in concentration. The marsh waits without mercy. If your net fails, tomorrow's ration will be bark tea and regret. No shelter from the storm. Just as your net nears completion, the sky cracks open. A roiling thunderhead blooms overhead, unleashing a deluge that soaks you to the bone in seconds. Rain pelts your lean-to, turning your feeble hide cover into a waterslide. You scramble inside, but the fire dies, the pike fillets go cold, and your net glues itself shut. The storm's fury crescendos. Wind whips reeds into frenzied dances. Lightning cleaves the sky, and the marsh water rises around your shelter. You huddle under a tattered hide, shivering, clutching your wet spear. Thoughts of hypothermia flicker through your mind. Your only reprieve is the storm's end. When the rain finally slackens, you emerge into a world scrubbed clean. The marsh reflects a tapestry of gray clouds and shattered branches. Your lean-to stands half collapsed. Your fire pit is a swamp. You have no shelter, no warmth, and night approaches faster than you can spit. Ephemeral triumphs undaunted, because survival demands obstinacy. You gather driftwood and rebuild a lean-to against a fallen tree. You clear a shallow pit for a fire, and amid soggy tinder, manage sparks that grow into a flicker of light. You roast your pike fillets on skewers made from straightened branches, savoring each smoky bite as if it were ambrosia. Blood-cold fatigue envelops you. Your body trembles joint by joint. Yet, as you nibble the last bite, you acknowledge a bittersweet truth. The day's trials, marsh near burial, spear-wrestling fish, rain-soaked flesh, have sculpted you into a crude echo of the Stone Age's finest fisherman. But tomorrow's dawn holds fresh horrors, infected wounds, depleted flint stock, and the ever-looming threat of predators drawn to the fire's glow. You close your eyes beneath your patched hide, the marsh's nocturnal chorus lulling you toward half-dreams of rivers that bite back. You survived part 2 by the thinnest margins, by the grimmest cunning. But the Stone Age is unforgiving, and there are 2 more parts to this saga. Will your sinew hold? Will your blaze endure? Or will the elements claim you as yet another footnote in nature's brutal ledger? Rest uneasy, dear viewer. Part 3 awaits, where frostbite gives way to predator hunts, tool breaks to tribal skirmishes, and the day's final challenge, finding water that won't kill you, looms on the horizon. Dawn arrives like a hungover drumbeat against your skull, the lean-to's patched hides rattling in a breeze that smells of wet fur and damp earth. You blink the night's exhaustion away and survey your broken camp, the fire pit half filled with mud, your spear blade dulled by yesterday's river brawl, and the braided grass net lying in soggy tatters. But the Stone Age fisherman doesn't quit, or at least is too stubborn to consider it, so you rise, back aching, and steel yourself for the day's fresh absurdities, predators of water and land. Your plan is simple: reclaim yesterday's triumph by fishing at first light, but fate has other ideas. Before the sun even warms your cheeks, you hear the low growl of a pack beast, wolves by the smell of fear and fur. You freeze, mind racing. Prehistoric wolves revere shoreline carcasses. Your pike fillets on that half-collapsed lean-to are a dinner bell. You grab your spear, knot your leather thong, and inch toward the lean-to's opening. Through the dripping hide, you spot 2 wolves nosing around your meager firewood pile. Their eyes glow a predator's green, teeth bared in anticipation of scavenged scraps. You realize they've learned your schedule. Hunger claws at your gut, but adrenaline surges hotter. Survival demands a performance of aggression. You charge, brandishing your spear overhead like a berserker in some primal ritual. The wolves scatter momentarily, but one, an alpha with scarred flanks, turns, hackles raised. You whirl the spear, trying to channel every flint-chipped frustration into a single point of threat. The wolf snarls, then bolts, dragging its mate away into the mist. You stand panting, heart drumming a warning. Tomorrow they'll return with numbers. Surviving the wolf ambush nets you a new survival tip. Predators become trial consultants. They reveal your camp's vulnerabilities. Tonight, you must conceal your fish and fortify your lean-to. Tribal skirmishes. Determined to avoid further carnivore consultations, you decide to trade for fresh fish with the nearby hunter-gatherer band you spied on day 1, a tentative alliance that could save your hide. The shady grove where they make camp lies half a mile north. You set off, wary of quaking moss and rattlesnakes. Upon arrival, you find them in ritual, a circle of painted warriors practicing spear throwing on buffalo skulls. They nod at your approach, eyes glinting with curiosity and caution. Their chieftain, adorned with feathered headdress and a necklace of freshwater mussel shells, greets you with grunts and hand gestures. You point to your spear, then pantomime fishing, splashing water, thrusting motion, a triumphant fish. The chieftain strokes his gray whiskers and grunts a reply. If you help them scour the nearby hillside for edible tubers, they'll gift you their surplus fish. Agreement struck, you join the foragers. The hillside is a patchwork of stony soil and thorny undergrowth, each root requiring dicey excavation with your flint awl. You dig, slide, and pry, at times wedging the awl between rock shards to extract a stubborn yam. Your fingers lose more skin than yesterday's evenings by the fire. Finally, with 6 tubers in your leather pouch, you return to camp. The band members grin and present you with 3 dried fish, sun-bleached, leathery, but edible. You bite into one and find it taste of smoke, salt, and triumph. Yet as you tuck the fish into your net-woven belt pouch, you overhear whispers. The band fears a rival tribe moving closer. Their painted children dart among the firelight, mimicking spear throws. The chieftain frowns, scanning the tree line. Soon, they'll need fierce allies. You realize this barter might pull you into tribal politics, an absurd twist for a fisherman. But in the Stone Age, politics is as primal as hunger. Water, that kills. Armed with fish and tribal goodwill, you make for the river. But a trick of fate turns your nourishment into poison. The river upstream flows through mineral deposits, and at its head pool, you spy whitish rock seams streaked with greenish rust. You wet your hands and test the water, a tang of iron and copper, too risky for drinking. The river's bounty is lethal without purification. You curse this natural charade. Boiling is your only safeguard, but you're out of dry wood. The wolves raided your stash last night. Your tribe allies offer what they can, a handful of resin chunks, but it's scarcely enough to scorch a twigs. You gather shreds of bark and summon every spark from your failing flint. The flame sputters, then roars to life. You pour river water into a clay-lined pit and hold the pot above the flames. It bubbles, hisses, and carries a chemical stench that makes you gag. After 10 minutes, you test the water on your wrist. The dryness of heat, no immediate burn. You sip. The tang lingers, but the copper bite is gone. Victory. Potable water. You refill your skin-dried gourds and feel a flicker of optimism. Except your gourds leak. The dried shells split at the seams. You clutch them, dripping precious life's fluid onto the mud. Survival tip. Don't take water gourds as guarantees. Tool break horror. 3 dried fish and just purified water lighten your pouch. But your spear shaft snaps mid-stride, the worn wood collapsing with an echo that sounds like failure. You stand, mouth agape, staring at the fractured shaft and the flint point that clatters into the mud. You consider burying the spear and weeping, but survival breeds odd determination. Using tribal awls and a hunk of birch bark cordage, you lash the flint tip to a straightened reed. It's a makeshift weapon, flexible, fragile, laughably primitive. You test the balance. It bends under minimal force. But you remember the pike and trout you bested. Terror can sharpen resolve. You shoulder the reed spear and march onward. The swarm of the marsh miasma. With new spear in hand, you return to the bog's edge, seeking eel nests and lily pad pike. The wind shifts in a miasma of marsh gas. Methane bursts trapped under algae, drifts toward you. It smells of rotten egg and burnt hair. Each breath sears your nostrils. Your head begins to throb. You wave your cloak before your face, but the stench persists, a ghost of decay reminding you that marshes are both meal ticket and death trap. You cough, stagger, and nearly drop your makeshift spear. On your knees, you vomit into a fetid pool. Nausea subsides, sweat beads on your forehead, and you acknowledge. Marsh gas is nature's chemical warfare. There's no filter for your lungs except distance. You retreat to higher ground, trading potential fish for clear air. The great marsh hunt. Exiled from the bog, you set sights on a nearby lake, where water lilies drift and carp gather near the shallows. The reed spear may buckle, but it might suffice for smaller prey. The sun slants low as you creep along the shoreline, eyes peeled for the sweeping tail of carp grazing on eucalyptus root worms. A school of carp grazes within spear distance. Your heart hammers as you lift the reed spear, raise it overhead. Mud squelches underfoot. Any snapping twig betrays your presence. You freeze, the carp flicker, you lunge, the spear pierces water with a hiss, but misses by inches. The carp scatter. You tumble forward, chest first into knee-deep water, splaying your arms in slapstick defeat. Soaked, muddy, and exasperated, you realize the lake's carp are too nimble for your straps of burl reed. You scramble out, soaked to the bone, hair full of pond scum. Behind you, a heron lands on a dead branch, tilting its head in silent judgment. The Stone Age world has a wicked sense of irony, bonfire of despair and a flicker of hope. Night falls with the speed of a falling stone. You return to the tribal camp, spearless and filletless, bones hollow with hunger. But the chieftain's hut offers refuge, a flickering bonfire flanked by hunters carving fresh venison skewers. The tribal members share the meat and brew a thick broth of mashed tubers and herbs. You drink deeply, the warmth flooding your cold belly. Over embers, the chieftain gestures toward your reed spear, then to a carved wooden shaft in his hut, a spare spear butt crafted from you. He hands it to you, nodding in solidarity. In return, you offer a dried fish fillet. In this exchange, you glimpse the odd alchemy of human bonds, cooperation born from mutual need. You lash the flint tip to the yew shaft, the new spear singing under the tension of your taut bindings. It feels balanced. Tomorrow, you'll test its metal. Epilogue to Part 3. As you drift into a slumber under furs gifted by the tribe, you reflect on the day's absurdities. Wolf ambushes, tribal barter, poisoned rivers, tool break tragedies, swamp gas warfare, and fish-mocking carp. You survived by grace, grit, and the kindness of strangers. Tonight, cave walls echo with tribal lullabies and the crackle of warm fires. But tomorrow promises fresh hells, guest appearances by hungry bears at dawn, lightning storms turning rivers into raging rapids, the unrelenting ache of frostbite on your broken hands. Part 4 looms like a cave entrance into unknown darkness, where only the most absurd and iron-willed will emerge alive. Rest uneasy, dear viewer, for the final act approaches. A deadly storm chase, confrontation with bear fisher, the ultimate test of fire-making under hail, and the closing chapter of why a Stone Age fisherman, even armed with yew and flint, wouldn't survive a single day without becoming fish food himself. Daylight claws its way through the canopy like a hangover yearning to be over, taut, insistent, and full of regrets. You awaken beneath your borrowed furs, body still humming from last night's broth and tribal warmth. Beyond your lean-to, the marsh stirs with predatory whispers. Today is the final trial, outrunning storms, outwitting bears, and mastering fire under hellish hail. Brace yourself, dear viewer, for the grand finale of why a Stone Age fisherman wouldn't last a day. The Bear Fisher's Challenge. You step into dawn's chill, reed spear in hand, breath pluming. The tribe's hunters murmur warnings. A grizzly known as the Bear Fisher roams these woods, famed for harpooning salmon from shallows with clawed paws. If you hope to fish, you might instead become a cautionary paw print on its belly. Undeterred, or blinded by necessity, you skirt the riverbank, scanning for salmon runs in the shallow riffles. A flicker of silver, fish darting upriver. You raise your spear when the bear fisher emerges. Massive, shoulder height, fur mottled with river debris. Its head swivels, nostrils flaring as it scents your fear. Your panic meter ticks skyward. You could flee, but upstream lies a waterfall you must scale to reach calmer pools. Downstream is open plain, a death march under bear speed. Survival demands ingenuity. You must outsmart this apex angler. You remember a tribal trick. Fish at 20 paces, bore a distraction, then retrieve prey. Gathering flat stones, you skulk behind a willow, hurling one upstream near a salmon school. The fish spook, the bear's attention snaps to the glint. It lumbers away with surprising silence for its bulk. Heart pounding, you slip into the river. The water roars around your knees as you gallop upstream. The spray lashes your face. The salmon bob like metallic ghosts. You thrust the spear, but miss again. You try a second cast, but the current wrenches your spear from your grip, sending it tumbling out of reach. Your breath shudders. No spear, no fish, and a bear may return. You scramble onto a half-submerged boulder, dripping and vulnerable. You need a new tool. Fast, improvised leister and hail of flint. You recall the yew shaft gifted by the chieftain, Though unbarbed, it's sturdy enough for a rudimentary leister. You break a small branch, carve 3 prongs with your flint blade, and lash them to the shaft with sinew. In 30 frantic minutes, you fashion a crude trident, your last hope. Clouds coil overhead, a chill thunder rumbles, a summer squall bred in high hills. You brace your makeshift leister as the first hailstones thump against your shoulders. Each impact feels like pebble bullets. The river's roar amplifies under the storm's breath. Survival tip: make every second count before the sky turns war zone. Scanning downstream, you spot a pool where salmon gather against a submerged log. You raise your leister, adjust your footing on slippery rock, and wait. The hail intensifies, blinding, numbing. You grit your teeth and lunge, jabbing at the water. The spear catches a fish's flank. It thrashes as you pull it free, blood mixing with icy droplets. Triumphant, you hold aloft the slippery prize, a hefty salmon gnawed into submission by your barbs. The bear fisher's roar echoes from downstream. You rehearse your next move, stash the fish, escape the bear, return for your catch. Hailstorm exodus. With your salmon secured under willow roots, you navigate downstream along a narrow deer path. The hail pummels you into a hunched crawl. Mud turns to mire. The bear fisher emerges from rain-soaked ferns, massive silhouette backlit by lightning. You sprint, a futile gamble against the bear's gallop, until you spot a cluster of driftwood lodged between rocks. You dive behind the debris, pressing the fish to your chest. The bear charges, claws raking the wet wood, splinters flying. Its growl shakes stones. You hold still, pulse drumming. The hail blankets you both in a deafening barrage, buying you cover. After an eternity measured in ear-splitting thunderbolts, the bear retreats, licking wood shavings from its claws. You exhale, muscles trembling. The salmon's weight is both victory and burden. You must now cook before your fire succumbs to the storm. Fire-making under the sky's fury. You gather sheltered tinder, birch bark torn from wind-bent trees, and huddle under a rock overhang. Using a flint whisper technique, rubbing flint against quartzite, you coax a spark. The hail rattles, flames flicker, then roar to life. Your arms ache from yew-branch carving, fingertips crack from hail's assault. Yet you cradle the flame like a newborn god. You skewer the salmon on a sharpened stick, turning it above the blaze. Steam and oil hiss, clinging to your nose. The meat sizzles, its skin crackling. You eat hungrily, hail-threaded wind drying your tears of relief. For a moment, existence is sublime. Salt, smoke, firelight, ionic rain. Nightfall's final test. Storm spent, you return upstream to claim your hidden salmon. The willow roots cradle your fish, still fresh beneath leaves. You retrieve it, nodding in exhausted triumph. But night arrives with a new threat. Hypothermia. Wet from river, soaked by hail, the marsh air sucks heat like a leech. You race back to the tribal cookfire, weaving through reeds and stumbling over roots. Your teeth chatter in staccato horror. You reach the camp as dawn's memory reddens the horizon. The hunters greet you with sparing concern and share furs. Wolf pelts hung to dry. They drape them over your shoulders, wordlessly acknowledging your ordeal. Epilogue. The day the river won. You collapse near the embers, salmon fillets spread on flat stones to warm. Your body warms, pink light returns to fingers. But each breath reminds you of the river's wrath, the bear fisher's power, the storm's betrayal, the marsh's hunger, and cold's creeping grievance. A tribal elder places a hand on your shoulder, an honor badge forged in survival. You meet his eye. Wordlessly, you share respect for forces primordial and absurd. Today, you cheated death by a mosaic of guile, savagery, and sheer obstinacy. Tomorrow, the river will still flow, storms will still brew, and predators will still test your mettle. And that, dear viewer, is why you wouldn't survive a day as a Stone Age fisherman. Because in the Paleolithic wild, every catch is a gamble with extinction, every tool a fragile truce with chaos, and every breath a borrowed coin in nature's relentless ledger.